Hello and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast. My name is Ryan,
And I'm Danny Ocean.
and tonight we are going to be going over Blades in the Dark from John Harper and Evil Hat Productions. This is where all of those Forged in the Dark games come from. It comes from this book right here. This big, thick, wordy book. This is a game.
It is a game.
Yeah.
I think your descriptor word. What was the descriptor word that you used?
If I had to describe this whole process here of getting to this point here where we're talking about this, I would say verbose. I think is the word that I would use.
I'd be inclined to agree.
It's I would say someone in the chat said rules medium. I'd say rules light, words ultra heavy.
Yeah.
This is a brick of a game and about as dense as one too. So yeah, I think that's my
I really like I like heists. So for me, I'm like, I dig this, honestly. I do. I'm excited to go through. We'll have fun going through. A lot of the rules are cool. I have some critiques as we do on this show. But honestly, my biggest critique as we go through is that there's a lot of text here that I don't need. And that genuinely made going through it actually harder. I hate to be like the little ADHD boy, but it was just like, there's certain walls of text where I'm just like, oh my God, I didn't need 60% of that. And I had to read it several times. I'm like, we do this. So
yeah, we both have ADHD. It took me days to read this book. Days to read this book. And here's the thing. John Harper seems like a super nice guy on the internet. I love lasers and feelings. Bro, like...
And I'm into this on like a fundamental level. Like I like the very dark setting, which we're really not really gonna jump into today too much. But I like it. I think it's cool. A lot of stuff is cool. I like the flashbacks. I like the heist thing. I like the dice mechanics. But man, we could just trim this down.
My God. So I think when we read Fist, I kind of like. In my, I don't know if we talked about on stream or before we got on stream, where I was like, is this a game that could just be 2 books? Like, do I need all this? Like, right. And honestly, it could be, but it's fine to not. Like, it's light enough in the beginning that it's fine to have the whole thing. This needs to be 2 fucking books. At one point, this references using this at the table, and I'm like, fucking how? Like,
yeah, it's. I mean, if I had a quick reference something in this, I think we went over like something like the action rules page, like how many pages it is when it talks about action rules. I was like, dude, I don't know about this being an on the table reference. I think if you go in, you need to have the SRD.
I purposely didn't go look at some of the links that they had in the book, because the point of, like, I think there's a player kit on the Blades in the Dark website. That's like, you could just give your players this. I have no idea what that looks like because I'm not rating the player kit. We're reviewing the book as is. So it might be easier. But there's a line in here that talks about, like, you won't get this the first time. You need to do it at the table. That's a problem. That's not like, it's so, the density of this, it really genuinely like hurt me. I literally messaged you on Discord and was like, bro, this is hurting my brain to read this right now, dude.
And I don't think that actually, I think this is a very, maybe not like, I don't want to say like easy to understand or anything, because but I don't think this game is actually like in essence that complicated.
It's not.
I just think it's how much is written. Like, I think that if this was trimmed down, you could absolutely read this through one time and understand it. Like,
okay, so let's
do it.
I mean, I could rant for an hour, so yeah, might as well just hop into this. And I will say one thing that you commented on earlier, I don't like heists. I realize now after playing a couple and reading some games that are based on it, I don't like heists. And
This has the flashback though. That's why I said
I hate it.
Ocean.
I don't like the
Like
God. I hate
11.
the flashback. I don't like the flashback. That's one of the only. That's the thing too, is I really genuinely enjoy the mechanics of how this plays. I mean, it's just PBTA with extra steps, and I like PBTA. But there are certain parts of it that I really genuinely mechanically love, and the flashbacks is not one of them. And the entire way that the book is presented on how much impetus is on the GM to craft the story, whether it says it doesn't or not, is one of the things I hate about 5e and really bothers me in here. We'll get to it, so I'll touch on it a second here. I don't like when a GM has to arbitrarily determine the DR or CR of something, because you can craft the way that you want players to act, react, and how the situation goes based on how you do that. And I feel like that takes a lot of initiative, a lot of autonomy. What's the word I'm looking for? Away from the players. And in the action role, which is the core role in this game that takes like 10 fucking pages to explain, not once but twice in that are you setting difficulty ratings for how a player can choose to do something. So we'll get to that, but we'll get there. So let's fucking get there.
We already have opinions. We definitely read this one before.
Man, we already have opinions. Real quick before we hop in, is there stuff that we want to spotlight right now? Yes. Fist, which we went over last time, is still on Kickstarter right now, but Planet Fist is a game that you need to go check out right now on itch. It's really fantastic. We're definitely going to talk about it more at some point, but we'll talk about it more at the end again. But as a quick spotlight, just 2 words: Planet Fist. Go check it out. Let's hop into the game, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end.
Planet Fist.
Boom.
It's a fist at the planet. Okay, sorry. Yeah. We're going.
God, Fist. Whew.
I know.
Man, if it's a lot. There's a lot we could say. There's a lot that's really good that we don't say. So anyway, right off the bat, let's just say, how do you feel about the art in this kind of thread? Just like as a quick, like, just as a, what are your thoughts?
Cover. Oh, there's art in this book?
I like that you made that point. Because
God, it's incredibly sparse to where, like, so obviously, like, when we do this, if you're not watching us and you were listening to us, we're on Zoom, and I have a Zoom background because I have a messy room, and it's always like a panel from the book or like piece of art from the book. And so I was scrolling through to find the art, and I was like, oh yeah, yep.
So here's the thing: is there's an okay amount of art. There's actually more in the setting section. Like, a lot of the setting and adventure section has art on like every page. But the problem that I have is not necessarily that there's not a lot of art, because there's a lot of spreads, like whole page sections, which really help like separate sections, like a lot of those actually. But
I guess they'll pick up more in the character section as well.
But there are definitely still some sections where like spot art would have been really nice. And honestly, just like, for example, like right here, there's just a big like half empty white page. Like, for a book of this production quality and everything like that, like, that's not like, oh my God, it's a piece of shit. But it's just like, that's like, you easily could have put like anything in there and it would have been fine. I just think a little bit more spot art throughout would have broken up a lot of the walls of text a little bit more.
I agree.
I don't think it's missing. I don't think it's necessarily missing like a quantity of art, in that like a little bit more spot art just as a means to, like I said, break stuff up would have been better. But how do you feel about the style throughout? The very like graphic design-y, like the cover, for example.
I think it's cool for the vibe it's trying to put out. Yeah. This, like, I think it very is appropriate for that. I mean, I personally think it could use a ton more art in general. Like, is there more in the later sections of the book? Yeah, totally. But there's just, I think it needs a ton more. But yeah, I mean, I think the artwork has this whole like
it's very graphic design. Like, it's very like, there's no gradient. It's very like solid color, solid color, solid color.
Yeah, it has that kind of like
for example, like for the most part, it's like black. It's like black, gray, orange, and sometimes the orange has like a lighter orange in it, but that's about it. But for the most part, it's like ink splat and solid graphic design colors.
Yeah. I mean, the art in the book is like, it's cool. It fits the vibe. It feels like dark. It feels dreary. Yeah, I like it. So
yeah, and I gotta say, the logo is sick as fuck.
Yeah, the logo is timeless. It genuinely is a great logo. And every time I see it, I'm like, yeah. That's
so for those in podcast land, it says blades big and then little in the with 2 daggers going out and then dark underneath it. It's clean. It's good. It's great.
Super good. Yeah.
It looks good big. It looks good small. Dope fucking logo. All right. Also, let's just talk about page count real quick, just so that again, the people that heard us bitch and moan about it early, it's 327 pages.
Right. It's a lot of pages. That might be the longest book we've done. I think it's longer than Lancer.
I don't know, and I'm pretty sure Hyperborea might be longer.
That's right.
But Hyperborea is also bigger. It's still like book size.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really look that big. And I will say the paper quality as a book, it's really nice. A bookmark, like a ribbon.
Yeah.
God would have been really honestly 3 so that I can reference a bunch of shit would have been better. There is no ribbon in this, but the actual book itself is really gorgeous. The print quality is really nice. The blades in the dark on the front is a different texture that feels really, really beautiful. The paper quality is really nice. The print quality is really nice. I mean, all around, really well produced book.
Also, I'm a dumb idiot. Lancer has 400 pages, so it's.
I was going to say Lancer's a thick boy. Like
it is a thick boy.
So
I just
getting into this,
bigger. It's a bigger book. So I was like, yeah.
It is. Well, it's more pages and bigger. Yeah. So getting into it, John Harper, game design, writing, layout, art, and cartography. A fucking renaissance, man. I mean, to do all of that shit, good because for the most part, I really love a lot of it. Yeah. And to be able to do the art and the maps, which are gorgeous, and the design and the writing and the layout, which is well laid out. Like that's a lot for one person, and they did a overall really fucking good job. What you know, regardless of whether we are in love with all of it or not, that's a lot for one person to do that good of a job on.
Yeah, I mean, also this is an amazingly popular ttrpg, so really, at the end of the day, who gives a fuck about our opinion? You know,
right? I mean, also, that's the thing that we've said over and over again.
The maps in this are incredibly usable. If you go towards the setting, like the maps in it, you're like, oh, these are like pristinely usable. They lay out like alleyways and stuff, which we're not probably going to dive into too deep today, but like it's a really great feature of this. So
I will say that I think there was a vast overemphasis on explanation and usability.
Yes.
And that I think is my biggest critique of this going all the way through. But we'll get to that. So one of the things I do enjoy, this right here says bladesinthedark.com is not hyperlinked, but going through this, a lot of it is. We'll get to that in a second. There's a thanks section for a lot of people.
Wait, do you see the bladesinthedark.com is not hyperlinked? Because it is on mine.
Right here?
Under the credits? Yeah, mine's hyperlinked.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. What version are you on?
8.2.
We're on the same one. Yep, it works. It takes me right to it.
Interesting. Let me see if all of my hyperlinks are broken. Maybe I have a setting in Acrobat that's being weird. Acknowledgements I think is really interesting, because one of the things I said about this whole thing, the entire Forged in the Dark system, is it's just PBTA with extra steps. I like those extra steps, but that's what it is. It's mixed success, but you build a dice pool first, and that's fine. I like it. I say that, but then I also disagree with myself, because like it is just one die. Like I feel like it's PBTA adjacent, not just PBTA with extra steps. I think what I said is a better tagline, but I will disagree with myself right there. But influences: Apocalypse World, Sundered Land, Shadow of Yesterday, Burning Wheel and Mouse Guard, Dream Askew, Monster Hearts, Quiet Year, Thou Art But a Warrior, Bliss Stage and Player. So I know about 2/3 of these, but there's other ones in it that I really want to check out just because I've never heard of them. Stars Without Numbers. I mean, Cities Without Numbers used AI art, and that was really, I mean, Kevin Crawford basically said, it's too big a book to not use AI art, so not really supportive of that. Night Witches, gotta love Jason Morningstar. Talos excited to get like 6E or whatever just recently dropped. Fate, Thief and Dishonored series, and Fallout New Vegas. So a lot of really, I can see where a lot of this went into this, and I really like it a lot. So contents wise, this is hyperlinked. Yeah, so I will say that. So it is bookmarked to hell, which is fantastic for something this big. Thank you so much. And not only this, every time that there's an inline hyperlink, it says go to page this. It is hyperlinked too. I couldn't imagine reading the book versus the PDF of this book because of how much easier it is to navigate on PDF than it is in the book, especially without ribbons and shit. Like that might have made it doable, but oh my God. So again, it's 37 pages long. So let's talk about section 1 is the basics, which goes from 1 to page 50. Two things about that. One, it's not the basics. There's way more than the basics in it. And two, you don't need, if you need 50 pages to tell me the basics of your game, my goodness. It's a lot. Characters goes from 51 to 91, which is fine. A lot of it is just big playbooks or whatever. That's fine. Yeah. There's a crew section, which is like 91 to 125. Also, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the individual crews and stuff. There's
like
the score.
The crew stuff too. You know, I like the flavor of your band of miscreants. You know, I really enjoy and like what they do. I like that part a lot. So
yeah. I think character creation and crew is definitely a big shining point. Like I said, I'm not a huge heist fan, but I think it's done extraordinarily well in this. And I think the crew creation would be a cool thing to do all the time. I think, didn't we touch on that a little bit? And maybe I'm just making it up when we went over Gangs of Titan City. Like you made a gang, right? Same kind of vibe.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I'm blanking. We've talked about Gangs of Titan City recently. I'm like, fuck, what did I think about that game? I
loved it. I think we were a little harsh on it. Well, we're being harsher all around, but I really love Gangs of Titan City a lot. See, that's what I like about, like, let's make a gang and do shit, not make a, like, I don't know. You can play this game without heisting. You can just be a bunch of assassins. So that's the thing. Like,
yeah,
you know, that's
true. I mean, you really could be. And I think that sounds like a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. The score is planning and engaging a score that's 125 to 145. Downtime is 145 to 161. How to play is 161 to 187. Running the game is 187 to 209. From 209 to 229 is Strange Forces. 229 to 237 is changing the game, and 237 to 308 is setting. I will say right off the bat, a good 60+% of the basics could and should be shunted into a GM section.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Yeah.
They explain everything 3 times, and as a player, you don't need all that, right? The how to play section, more than anything, feels more like a player facing like principles and like playing. It's not how to play the game, it's more like playing the game, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, do you think NPC threat levels is player facing, you know?
No, well, I mean, a huge chunk of this needs to go down into GM section too.
Yeah, I feel like there's some shifting around in general, you know?
Oh my, like so much of this book needs to be reorganized into differently labeled sections, because again, the basics is not the basics. It's 1,000% more than you need for the basics of the game. And again, like the half of how to play section and half of the basics should just be in the running the game section, which should just be GM section. Like this really should be a player section and a GM section, and the GM section can be as verbose as you want, but like everything after everything from Strange Forces and beyond, except for maybe changing the game, which is a weird place to put that. Why not put that under the GM section? Duskwall should all be a separate book. Like there should just be a setting. Even the GM stuff, you could have like a player book and a GM and setting book, and this would be so much easier to parse. Anyway, so getting into the quote unquote the basics. So we are gonna skim a lot of this because holy crap, if we didn't say verbosity enough, verbosity. But I really want to go over these 2 paragraphs here to get into it. So first of all, the game. Blades in the Dark is a game about a group of daring scoundrels building a criminal enterprise on the haunted streets of an industrial fantasy city. boom, like every game should have a tagline like this. It makes it super easy for us to like throw that up in a review or promo. That's a great fucking tagline. Like right off the bat, that is what this is. There are heists, chases, escapes, dangerous bargains, bloody skirmishes, deceptions, betrayals, victories, and death. We play to find out if the fledgling crew can thrive amidst the teeming threats, blah, 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 blah. These two...
It's so funny because it's almost immediate. That second paragraph, just don't need it.
Yeah. These two next paragraphs really, night and day. Let me get to them and we'll explain, and then I'll say it. So I'm going to read these two. The game takes place in the cold, foggy city of Duskwall. It's Doskvol, but it says AKA Duskwall or the Dusk. I like that. Vibey as fuck right off the bat, making the W a V. Hits me with it.
Love it.
A lot of great use of bold in the layout as well too. It's industrial in its development, which is industrial is bolded. That's great. Imagine a world like ours during the second industrial revolution in the 1870s. There are trains, steamboats, printing presses, simple electrical technology, carriages, and the black smog of chimney smoke everywhere. Duskwall is something like a mashup of Venice, London, and Prague. It's crowded with row houses, twisting streets, and crisscrossed with hundreds of little waterways and bridges. You got me.
Amazing.
I'm immersed, right? The next paragraph, I'm gonna read it and then I'll tell you what popped in my head immediately. The city is also a fantasy, bolded. The world is in perpetual darkness and haunted by ghosts, a result of the cataclysm that shattered the sun and broke the gates of death, capital gates, capital death, 1,000 years ago. The cities of the empire are each encircled by crackly lightning towers to keep out the vengeful spirits and twisted horrors of the Deathlands. To power these massive barriers, the titanic metal ships of the Leviathan hunters are sent out from Duskwall to extract electroplasmic blood from massive demonic terrors upon the ink-dark void sea. You're in a haunted Victorian-era city trapped inside a wall of lightning powered by demon blood. If there has ever been a time to use that fucking Anchorman, like that escalated quickly meme, it should be beside this fucking paragraph, because it's like, oh, we live in like late 1800s Venice. Dope. No, you're trapped inside a lightning wall powered by demon blood, and it's haunted to shit. Holy crap.
Good setting.
I love
Very
it.
good setting.
I love
Very
it.
good
I wish, I don't know. I didn't feel the vibes of that a lot as I was going through. I think the way that things are named speaks to it more than kind of like the way, and I think that all also comes back to how many words are in the freaking game. Like, I think it really took me out of any level of immersion I could have possibly had while reading this book. And this is the part that gets me though. So the point of all of this is to create a pressure cooker environment for our criminal escapades. Traveling outside the lightning barrier is a very bad idea, so it's impractical to leave town and wait for the heat to die down after you pull off a score. So I love to picture John Harper sitting down and being like, man, I don't really want them to leave town. So what can I do? You know what? I'll have the gates of death break 1,000 years ago, shatter the sun, and surrounded by a void sea full of demons and create a lightning barrier. They probably won't leave town, right? Yeah.
You write it in a separate paragraph at the end too, and they definitely won't. So
no. But
I was thinking this paragraph, the point to create the pressure cooker environment is maybe not just get rid of it, but move it into the GM section. Be like, hey, when you're running this, the point is that they cannot escape the trouble they get themselves into. There's nowhere to go. No. And that's cool. But again, you could also just get rid of that. Don't need it. Sure. Like, you don't need it. There's going to be a lot of parts where I'm like, didn't need that. Like, it's just... I mean, also it could be like lowered to like, you're in a haunted Victoria area city trapped inside a wall of lightning powered by demon blood. If you get in trouble, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. But here's the thing is clearly John wanted to explain a lot of this game. Right. That's why I'm saying this should be 2 books. There should be there should be 3 books. There should be a player book, a GM book, and a setting book, or the entire book should be broken down into 3 different ways. This would not be in the player section.
Right. I agree.
Okay. So we're going to skim a lot of this because a lot of this is repeated like 18 times. So the players, each player creates a character and works as part of a crew. there's a lot of explanation on like I feel like half this book is if you just extrapolate it on like what is a ttrpg for 100 pages.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's a lot. It's a lot. And here's the thing, this might be someone's first this really could be someone's first tabletop
this
game.
actually could be too. Yeah.
And I feel like with the amount of hand holding that this game has, this is an easy transition from 5e. So I don't want to shit on all of it too hard, but I feel like, again, like I feel like it should be sectioned.
I've actually suggested this for somebody who wanted to run something for the first time ever that wasn't 5e. And I was like, you guys should look at Blades of the Dark. Like, you like they're all criminals in their fucking game. It's like, you like the heisty thing. You're all gothy edgelords. You'd love it. Yeah. We love it. We love the setting. So,
the setting's fantastic. Yeah. So there's 2 whole paragraphs here of like each player strives to bring the character to life. They're interesting. They're scoundrels. There's a bolded, this is the player's core responsibility. They engage with the premise of the game, seeking out interesting opportunities for crime, blah, 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 blah. And then there's a paragraph, the player works with the game master to establish tone and style and all this. See players' best practices, page 182. If you have a thing that says see it somewhere else, just put it there.
Yeah, just put it there.
Just put it there. I will say it is hyperlinked, and I love that. I didn't find a single broken one. Layout wise, as far as whether not talking about art, but specifically layout on usability and readability, for as much text as here, I will say it is still very readable, like objectively, whether it's easy for your brain to absorb it or not. So characters, they attempt to, you're a ragtag crew. Once again, you're poor, you're independent, you're an organization. There's a bunch of character types. There's cutters, which are fighters, hounds, which are sharpshooters and trackers, leeches, which are tinkers, alchemists, and saboteurs, lurks, which are stealthy infiltrators, slides are manipulators and spies, spiders are devious masterminds, and whispers are arcane adepts. Vibey as fuck. Love it.
Very vibey. Also, good names for classes. I know what they are when you say them. The only one that I'm not sure about is like slides and whispers, but like honestly, not bad. Like, not like it's like way out left field or anything. I love whispers. I love whispers.
Yeah. Slides is, I'm like, so am I sliding away from stuff? Like,
yeah,
I feel like,
not bad.
but
I have no major complaints about it, but like, let me tell you, the moment you're like, oh yeah, my character's a hound, I'm like, okay, well, I know what a hound does, Oh, my character is like a leech. It's like, well, I know that old healers and alchemists were called leeches,
Yeah. I'm sure there's a reason for slides. We're probably missing something in Victorian era stuff or whatever. I think because of how good every other one is named, I'm sure we're missing something. Slides doesn't bother me. I get it. I just feel like they're sliding around, like all like whatever, stealthy. But anyway, no qualms there. You got the crew. Again, we'll get into this later, but you have assassins, which, come on, cults, bravos, which are thugs and extortionists, hawkers, which are sellers of illegal products, smugglers, and shadows. And shadows are thieves and spies. Like, vibey as fuck. Really great names. Love that all the way through. That's the crew.
So you would play, you would want your players to be assassins, huh? You would run this as like an assassin game?
I would run it as assassin, cult, or shadows. Those would be my top 3.
I would definitely run I'm really interested in running like a cult game where it's like, like you are in direct contact with a forgotten god that's not very powerful, but the more people you get to join your cause, the more powerful your forgotten god gets. Good luck.
What would be your top 3 crew?
Assassins, cults, I don't know, somewhere between, I think shadows. I really do want to play this as a heist. Like, I want to do, and I like flashbacks. I really want to do the Ocean's 11. It's like, well, I followed you here. It's like, haha, funny, because actually we had a guy following you while you were following us. And it's just again. Like, have you seen that Rick and Morty episode?
Yeah. Like with but the Rick and Morty episode is like also explains why I don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's because you just get a series of that. Like, I just feel like we're getting into it. Real quick, your top 3 characters before we get into it.
Oh, I like all of them fine. Honestly, hounds definitely were like I was leaning more towards hounds than I think any of them. But
I'm surprised whispers.
I know. I really like the tracker sharpshooter. I don't know. I was kind of in the mood for it. So I feel like in a setting like this, like, I don't want to be a magic user. I want to be like, be a slide, like be a hound, like, or a lurk,
gotcha.
like really sneak into places.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, because I wouldn't play this as a heist game, I would. I mean, I would just steer away from any of the characters that are real heisty. You know, I would do whisperers or cutters or even hounds or something. Anyway, so there's the game master. The GM establishes the dynamic of the world. This is 2 paragraphs that basically tell you what a GM does. We know what a GM does. There is a link here. It says for more running the game, page 187. Click there. I'm okay with, like, again, we're explaining what the game master does.
Yeah.
I don't need 2 paragraphs for it. Playing a session. So what's it like to play? A session of Blades in the Dark is like an episode of a TV show. I will say one pet peeve I had through the entire game is the use of on and off screen a lot. I'm not on a TV show. I get that it's supposed to like be the vibes of it. I don't know why it irritated me every time I saw it, but I'm like, how about like on scene or off scene or like anything that would make me feel like, I just feel like on screen just killed my immersion a bunch of times. But a session, this is 1, 2, 3 paragraphs of basically saying like, it's basically Peaky Blinders, but like demon blood and lightning and shit in it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's basically what this says. It's during a session, the crew of scoundrels works together to choose a criminal score. That's like the 3rd time they've said that already. A given game session is typically 1 score of the following downtime plus exploration and discovery of a new opportunity. As your group gets more familiar with the game, you might be able to pack more into a session. After a dozen sessions or so, you might be able to decide to break the rules. There's a section in here that really gets me, but I'll find it. So it's kind of breaking down, like kind of playing a session, but kind of not really.
Right. It's like how to play. They have these in every game, and we kind of skip through them often. But it's like this is like, what is a RPG? You know,
in like 4 pages again. So before you start, read the book. This line. Here's the line. This is the line that made me just go, bro. Like, read this book once through. You won't immediately understand everything until you see it play. You won't get all the rules right the first time. That's fine. The rules will make more sense when you read them again after you play. That's not a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
I also think
the
there's
rules
something to be said about setting people's expectations. Like when you tell them that they're going to get confused, they go in being like, well, I'm going to get confused by this. You know,
seriously. And like then do everything you can to not let that happen. Like I think this game more than anything needs pie charts. There's like 1 chart in here that's completely unnecessary, but like I think that what makes this game difficult is how many fucking words are in it and how things are explained 3 different ways for everything. It takes 10 pages to explain everything. Like if this just broke down, like there are really good sections in here that are like 1, 2, 3, 4, here's a quick thing. And then it's like 10 pages to explain those 4 things you broke down in a really quick, easy way. And then another summary that is also way easier to digest than anything that was written. And I'm like, if you would have just given me the 1 through 6 and this summary, I would understand it. But yeah, trying to parse that is a pain. So it talks about touchstones in the section, Peaky Blinders, like I said, read through starting situation on page. As soon as I kept seeing things that said page 204, I'm like, come on. Starting the game, page 201. There's a whole section on touchstones here. There's like half a page, like Peaky Blinders, The Wire.
That's some good touchstones, you know. It's good to have that, you know.
Yeah, Gangs in New York. The song, I've listened to it. That's cool. What you need to play. People and paper and dice. There you go. Make the game your own. This is a page this is the only page in the book that I think is really just screaming for a piece of IB art. Like right at the end of like, all right, now we're going to get going.
White section right at the bottom of 5. Yeah.
This also isn't hyperlinked for me. I wonder if this is like I don't know if it's for you, but I wonder if it's just something I have in my.
Oh no, this one's not for me actually.
Oh, whatever. It's easy copy paste. So there's a section. There's 1, 2, 3 plus paragraphs of making the game your own. Role playing at its essence is an expressive act. Again. It talks about role playing, and then it'll give you 50 pages later on how that's done. So the core system, the conversation. Guess what? Role playing is a conversation. Yeah. That's what it is. Here's 3 paragraphs on how it's a conversation. The GM presents the fictional situation of the characters find themselves in. The players determine their actions. The GM tells you what happens after. That's it. There's a whole section here on judgment calls, and this is where I think the judgment calls section is the only real beef I have with the entire, is one of the two biggest beefs I have with the system. So role-playing is collaborative, expressive act, not a purely strategic endeavor. This is from the book. You'll need to make judgment calls. By making these choices, the game group together establishes style, tone, and form of fiction. I disagree with how much the book says it's together when so much impetus is placed on the GM, and we'll get into that. So when you play, you'll make several key judgment calls, and then gives you like, I love examples. We love examples. It's too many fucking examples. Which actions are reasonable as a solution to a problem? Can this person be swayed? Must we get the tools out to tinker? Blah, blah, blah. How dangerous and how effective is a given action in the circumstance? Which consequences are inflicted to manifest dangers? Does this situation call for a dice roll? Which events in the story match experience triggers for characters and crew advancement? It's just a lot. Then we get into rolling the dice. This is page 7. And this is in the core system section, which is part of the basics, which again is 50 pages long. Rolling the dice is a great core mechanic. You roll several at once and you read the single highest result. That's it. So if the highest dice is a 6, it's a full success. So the game automatically tells you you're using D6s, and it's a mixed success system, right? And you're building a dice pool to do that. So if the highest die is a 6, it's a full success. Things go well for you. If you roll more than 1 6, it's a critical success. You get an additional advantage. If you roll a 4 or 5, it's a partial success. You do what you were trying to do, but there are consequences: trouble, harm, reduced effect, all that. And on a 1 to 3, it is a bad outcome. Things go poorly. You probably don't achieve your goal, and you suffer complications too. That is the core of the entire game. I don't need 50 pages for you to tell me. You will build a dice pool. You will roll that dice pool, and then you will take the one highest die from that dice pool and put it on the mixed success 1 through 3, 4, 5, or 6. The only time it matters beyond that is if you have multiple 6s, then you get a critical success.
Yeah.
I like it. I love that. I think it's a great fucking mechanic. Yeah. It's a really cool, like I said, it's definitely influenced by PBTA, but I don't like when people just say that anything that uses mixed success is automatically PBTA. I don't know if that's the first game that ever did it, but like there's so much more to PBTA than just using a bell curve to determine mixed success. But again, obviously this is influenced by that. And then there is just a bunch of paragraphs explaining the same thing over and again. If you ever need to roll, but you have 0 or negative dice, you roll 2 dice and take the single lowest, and you can't crit on that. I like that. Great.
Very clean rule. I do like that. You're like, well, I got nothing. It's like, all right, roll.
Yeah.
Roll
that whole section so clean. Love that whole section. Really great. And then it basically says like that, extrapolate that across every system. Fine, cool, love it. The most common result is a 4 or 5 partial success, which is why I love mixed success games, because it's a yes but. It is yes but made mechanic. You know what I mean?
Yes,
love
that. Yeah.
Anyone that's never played Archipelago, go play it. To create a dice pool, you'll use traits. You'll use action ratings. You'll use just 18 layers of shit that just is a lot. So there are 4 types of rolls. There are action rolls, which is when a PC attempts to do something dangerous or troublesome. There's downtime rolls, when you're trying to do leisure stuff. There's fortune rolls, which the GM can make a fortune roll to disclaim decision making and leave something up to chance. Okay, that's fine. Then there's a resistance roll, which a player can make a resistance roll when the character suffers a consequence they don't like. The roll tells us how much stress the character suffers to reduce the severity of a consequence. I also don't like the resistance roll. Bothers me. It's just like you choose to do something, then you suffer a consequence from what you choose to do, and then go, nah, I don't want to. The consequence is the most fun part. Like, I get that you're still, but it's just like, I just feel like this whole game has training wheels on it.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think that's for a specific person, like kind of like player. I think there's a lot of stuff I would take from this and I would use, and most of it, but I don't know that I would keep resistance rolls. You know.
There's also an engagement roll, which is just a fortune roll, which then just call it a fortune roll. Like, I don't know. We'll get to that.
There's a lot of different kinds of rolls in this. I think it was my first comment I said to you was like, there's a lot of different. Yeah. I mean, you know,
it's just, I just feel like it's just layers. I feel like this is algebra in the dark. You know what I mean? If this, then that, so then this, then that. I don't necessarily. I mean, yeah, probably. Here's the thing is, I don't know. I would have to really sit down and decide how I would parse out the stuff that I don't want or need. But I just feel like there's a lot of keywords. And there's a lot, like I said, a lot of impetus on the GM to be like, okay, in this situation, you have to look at this and this and this and this and this. And if this, then this and this and this and this. Like I said, like half this book should be pie charts at this point. Like give me algorithms to
you mean like flow
just
charts?
Be like, or yeah, flow charts. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. So half this book should be flow charts of just being like, well, if they want to do an action roll, then do this.
Flow charts.
Oh my God, that would make that my brain would absorb that so much better. So game structure. There's free play, which is anytime you're just playing the game. Right. I don't understand why you necessarily need a term for just like playing the game.
By default, the game is in free play.
Yeah, by default. Yeah. So when the group is ready, you can choose a target and you can do all your criminal stuff. You plan, and then you do your engagement roll, which we'll get to after you do the whole score thing. And then during the score, you engage in stuff. And then afterwards, there's downtime, which has its whole own thing. It reminds me of Slayers a little bit in kind of like you're either planning or you're acting kind of way. Right. Which I'm sure Slayers had some inspiration from this. During downtime phase, stuff happens. There's payoff. There's heat. We'll get to that. Phases are conceptual. Another page that could use a little bit of spot art right here on page 8. Here is the one chart in the book on page 9, which to me means nothing.
I appreciated that this chart was there to divide stuff up. You know.
Yep. I wouldn't have minded
more of this and
more of these.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because they say one thing about it is just like there's a reason that the ink splats are fuzzy on the edges because not everything fits perfectly. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me more of these. So there's a big bubble for free play, which talks about character scenes, action consequences, gathering information, choosing a target, choosing a plan. There's a big bubble for downtime, which is payoff, heat, entanglements, downtime activities, returning to free play. There's a sideways one that talks about the engagement role. Actually, so the whole thing kind of goes like this. It's not like down. It goes like it circles down and around and back up. So downtime is at the end. So it goes free play to engagement roll to score to downtime, which at that point, I think it would have been better to just have it all going down because why loop it back? I don't know. Regardless. Yeah. So action ratings. Drop the term ratings. It really like I didn't get why it's called action ratings and then attribute ratings, but then they just use action like a lot later. I don't know. I think some of the keywords in this could be edited a bit. Man, I feel like we're just going in hard on this.
The rating is just essentially how many points you have into each individual action, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, into 12 different actions. Yeah. Right.
So first off, so I have no issue with action rating. Like each of your actions has a rating. You have a rating for it, how good you are at it or whatever. My far greater issue is 12.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. Like attune, command, consort, finesse, hunt, prowl, skirmish, study, survey, sway, tinker, wreck. I could think of half those that could be collapsed down and given just a broader definition.
I think also maybe creating more general, like, I mean, I kind of thinking of like stat based things where it's like, well, you just create like a brain, you for studying or surveying or tinkering, it's under brain, or whatever. And I understand that with this many things that it really allows you to divide up what the characters are good at when you get kind of to the playbooks, because they all have different like ratings for actions that they start with. But yeah, 12 is too many. So,
but like, I mean, just right off the top of my head, like you could put attune and consort together and just give it a broader definition. You could put finesse and prowl together and just give it a slightly broader definition. You could put skirmish and wreck together and just give it a slightly broader definition. Like you could, I mean, there's just like study, survey. I personally like. I understand like the want to differentiate those, but like it's okay. Like again, this is I feel just a little bit handholdy. Like I said, this is a training wheel part for me, where it just feels like you you see a lot of I feel like there's a lot of lack of faith in players' ability to just go in this. I feel like everything is, and then on top of it being very like basically flowchart, there's a million words to explain exactly how you should be doing it too, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so you get ratings from 0 to 4 for each of those 12 things. That's the thing that happens. On an action roll, okay, we're going to go into now like 10 pages on how an action roll works in a bit. So action roll is the base move of the game, right? We're not, it exists, and I'm pretty sure we hit it in a second, so I don't see a reason to, no, maybe not. So, okay, so action roll. This is what happens with the action roll. When you do something that's dangerous or troublesome, it's the whole like when a thing has a risk and blah blah blah. The possible results of the action roll depend on your character's position. Okay, so action roll. But no action roll. There are 3 positions: control, risky, and desperate. Okay, right. And then if you're in a controlled position, the possible consequences are less serious. Desperate, obviously more. Risky is the middle one, and that's the default position. Like. That's what it is. So for more, we get to page 18 for more on action rolls. So we're not going to dig to it too deep there. So this is really for action ratings and attribute ratings. So on action ratings are for things that you're actively choosing to do. It's an action you're taking that you can suffer consequences for, right? So attribute ratings are completely different. And there's only 3 of those. There's insight, prowess, and resolve. So each of the actions is under one of those attributes, but they don't really, I didn't find that they really interacted a ton. So there are 3 attributes. Each one goes from 0 to 4 still. And that tells you how many dice to roll when you use the attribute. The rating for each attribute is equal to the number of dots in the first column under that attribute. All right. See the example to the right. So we're going to just scroll down there and get to it in a second. So example, action, and attribute rating. So what we're looking at is a table here that is broken into 3 sections: insight, prowess, and resolve. Okay. And under each of those is 4 of the 12 actions. So this is basically, if you were looking at 5e, you're looking at your skill list under your attribute. So under, intellect, you're looking at history and arcana and stuff like that. That's how this is broken down into, right? That's how I see it in my brain for those that have, played a ton of 5e. So what you see underneath that then too is next to all of the 4 things underneath it, to the left of that is 4 dots. Okay, so you get 4 rows of 4 dots with an action by each, all underneath an attribute. Okay, so for example, we'll just look at the top one. Under insight, there is 4 rows of 4 dots, right? And after the first dot, there's a line to separate the first dot off. And then at the end of each row of dots, there's hunt, study, survey, tinker. So there's 1 dot marked on hunt. So you know that you have 1 dot in hunt. And because it is in the first row, you know that you have 1 insight. Okay. Going down the next row, you got prowess. Okay. Under prowess, there's finesse, prowl, skirmish, and wreck. Okay. So under prowess, you have 1 dot in prowl. Okay. But then you have 2 dots in skirmish. So if you're using prowl, you have 1 dot. If you're using skirmish, you have 2 dots. But because both prowl and skirmish have their first dot selected, your prowess equals 2. Because 2 of those are selected. So that's how you can get to 0 through 4 on your attribute, which just means if you have any dot in any action, you have a point of that as your total attribute. But then across the dots, you can get up to 4 for the attribute. So you could take skirmish up to 4. It doesn't affect how much prowess you have, but just the fact that you have it at all gives you a point in prowess. I'm fine with this. This is what we needed more of the whole thing, is this tables here. And I think the explanation next to it is really good. The character has a hunt action rating of 1. The insight attribute is 1. It's explained really well. Another spot art page. So I think that totally makes sense. I think I said it's explained really well. Kind of. I mean, I think there's a lot easier way to basically say that all of your actions fall underneath an attribute. And if you have a point in an action, you gain a point in the attribute.
I don't love how this is put together and laid out. I don't think I have an issue with it functionally, but like, yeah, I don't know.
I just feel like, once again, this is over-explained. I don't think the game is necessarily over-engineered. I think it's more over-explained. We literally have like a whole page on action ratings and attribute ratings to explain like your action and attributes. And again, like in 2 lines, you can just say all of your actions fall under an attribute. If you have a point in an action, you get a point in the attribute. You know, the attribute only counts the first point. So it's, I don't know. The verbosity makes it harder to parse, I think. And this is again an example of like over explaining to the point of making it just confusing. A lot of the anyway, so moving on from that, so there's a resistance roll. So each attribute resists a certain type of danger. So basically you're talking about actions and saves here, right? Checks and saves, right? Action roll is checks, resistance roll is your save, right? And when you're using a resistance roll, that's when you're using your attributes.
Right.
Okay, so each attribute resists a different type of danger. You get stab, for example, you resist with physical harm with prowess, right? So basically, action ratings are for actions, and attributes are for resistance. That's about where we're at. So when the enemy has a big advantage, you'll need to make a resistance roll before you take your own action. For example, when you duel, For more on resistance rolls, go to page 32. Just put it all on page 32. Give me 2 lines. Whole page of art here. I love it. It's dope. It's some like lightning demon
is a cool
thing.
piece, yeah.
Yeah, love this. I love the full art pages are fucking dope. Okay. Stress and trauma. Stress exists. Trauma exists. I like the use of trauma here. I think it's done well, but we'll get to that. So stress, you basically have an amount of stress, and stress is something that you can use, right? So players in Blades of the Dark have a reserve of fortitude and luck called stress. When they suffer a consequence they don't want to accept, they can take stress instead. The result of the resistance roll, see page 32, determines how much stress it costs to avoid a bad outcome. I just don't like the idea of, I don't know if this is the part, but there's a part where it basically says, nah, I don't want that. In my opinion, you do an action, you suffer the consequences of your action. To have a pool of, nah, I don't like that. It's just, I don't know why it bugs me, but it does. So there's an example here. It's fine. I'm not going to read it. Pushing yourself is where I think stress shines, right? You can use stress to push yourself for greater performance. For each bonus you choose, take 2 stress, right? There's 3 options here. You can add 1 dice to your roll, and this can be used for an action roll or downtime roll. Okay. There you can add 1 level to your effect. We'll go over effect in plenty of pages. And then you can take action when you're incapacitated. And that's part of the consequences on page 30. I like that. I stress mechanic as far as that goes. Dig that. Pushing yourself, big fan. Your ability to push yourself for 1 dice means you effectively have. This is the one thing I don't like, though. Your ability to push yourself for 1d means you effectively have at least 1d in every action as long as you have stress to burn. So the idea of having stress to burn when you want to push yourself, I love that idea, because you give this like choice of like, man, do I really want to use it or not? But I feel like that whole sentence there basically says, well, you just always have it. If you got stress, not a big deal. You just it's the default if you have stress. To me, feels like you're telling them to like not worry about the choice of it. I feel like it lessens the impact of like how risky it is of you using it. I don't know.
It lowers the level of actual
danger, which again feels like feels like training wheels. Basically, it's just like, I feel like this game does everything it possibly can to make sure the players succeed, which is fine.
Yeah.
If you listen to us, you know that we prefer a system where the players suffer. They suffer the consequences of their actions. Oh yeah, here it is. It's important to remember this. Some players tend to forget and dismiss actions for which they have 0 dots. Nah, I can't do that. I don't have a tune. Blah blah blah. That's not what I meant. So trauma, I do like the way trauma is used here. So when you mark your last box of stress, you suffer trauma. When you take trauma, circle 1 of the trauma conditions. I like that the trauma conditions don't really lean into like mental illness, you know what I mean? It's more of just like impacts of like a bunch of heavy shit. If you suffer trauma, you're out of the action for that. When you return, you have 0 stress and your vice has been satisfied for your next downtime. Basically, it resets to 0 when your trauma hits. So trauma conditions are permanent, and when you mark your 4th trauma condition, you're out. Basically, you've suffered too much and you can't do this shit anymore. So the trauma conditions are cold. You're not moved by emotional appeals or social bonds. Haunted. You're often lost in reverie, reliving past horrors and seeing things. You're obsessed. You're enthralled by one thing: activity, person, or ideology. You're paranoid. You imagine danger everywhere. You can't trust others. Reckless. You have little regard for your own safety or best interest. Soft. You lose your edge. Unstable. Your emotional state is volatile. You can instantly rage or fall into despair. And vicious. You'd seek out opportunities to hurt people, even for no good reason. So I do, again, like, I don't like that it's obsessed, but doesn't say, like, have like OCD or something. Like, I really like that it doesn't fall into like the trope of using like real like mental illness.
My favorite one's soft. You've seen too much bad. You're just a nice guy now. Like you become sentimental, passive, in general. It's a whole thing of just like you saw a kid get hurt on a mission, and now you have a problem like pulling the trigger. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I
like killing kids for you.
Yeah, right. I like cold. You're not moved by emotional appeals or social bonds. Like, I feel like that's something that, like, again, like when you're dealing with stress over a long period of time, that's something that can happen to you. But again, it's not a mental illness that you suddenly have. That I like that it leans away from that trope. So stress in the supernatural. A close encounter with a spirit or demon is a harrowing experience by default. The effect is to paralyze a player. Players can choose to freeze up or flee, or make a resistance roll with resolve to ignore the effect. Again, a lot of ignoring the consequences of your shit. Being possessed by a spirit inflicts a level of trauma at the end of every week. Once the possessed body suffers its 4th level of trauma, it can no longer sustain life. The possessing spirit can bond with the corpse and become a vampire. I love that. I think that's a cool vampire origin.
That's a great vampire origin. I agree. And like, it's not, this one's not ignoring the consequences. Like, you can make a resistance roll with resolve. Like,
right.
So like, there is still failure there. Like, and the other one's like, just gotta freeze or flee, Yeah,
well, that's when I think a resistance roll is good. I like something happened to you that you didn't cause. That's my thing, is if you do an action, you suffer the consequence, you shouldn't then get another turn to be like, nah, I don't want to. But like, if something happens to you, you can try to resist that action happening to you. You're not resisting the consequence of your action. You're resisting an action that's being done to you. Very different, in my opinion. So anyway, progress clocks are a thing. I love clocks. We love the shit out of clocks.
We love clocks on this show.
Clocks.
If you're not using, like, clocks are so fun, like, to use in any game. It doesn't matter if you're playing a tabletop RPG that uses them. You can use them, especially in like big scenes with your players. They're trying to accomplish something. Like, use clocks, like, have them filled in, have the clocks be like there's several different kinds. I think they actually name all of them here too, or a lot of them. But yeah, I'm a big fan of using clocks in games.
Yeah, I mean, Necronautilus, like, Adam Bass does a lot of clock usage. Clocks in general, I think, are such a better way to elide a lot of shit happening than a lot of other ways. This has a good example of how clocks are. Basically, you take a circle, you break it into segments, and as shit happens, you mark a segment off, right? One example here that we'll use, and then we'll move on from this: sneaking into the Blue Coat Tower, make a clock to track the alert level of the patrolling guards. When the PCs suffer consequences from partial successes or missed rolls, fill in a segment. So if the guards are super on edge, you could have 4 segments, but if they're kind of fucking lazy, you could have 6 segments. And every time you fail or get a partial success, you fill one in, and then once that happens, the guards jump in and go about their business. I like that. I think that's really interesting. I think it's a direct consequence of a player action that I dig. So the effect level of an action or circumstances used to tick segments on a clock, I'm not even, the effect is a whole other thing. You can't usually fill a clock with the effect of a single action. When you create a clock, make it about the obstacle, not the method. It's about the clocks for an infiltration to be interior patrols in the tower, not sneak past the guards, right? It's about what you want. It's the obstacle, not how you're going to overcome the obstacle. There's a section on simple obstacles. Not every situation requires a clock. Sometimes shit just happens. You don't have to roll for everything. A lot of people need to remember that a lot of, like, you don't need to roll for everything. Danger clocks, racing clocks, link clocks, mission clocks, tug of war clocks, long-term project. I will say the other core of this game is clocks. Like, pretty much everything else is just termed. Oh, you want to do this thing that's going to take more than one turn? Here's a clock. Like, you're fighting a bad guy? Here's a clock. Like, you're racing against somebody? Here's a clock. You want to get out of a thing? All right, here's a clock that goes into another clock. And then on top of that, like, downtime, long-term project clocks. You want to become really good at this thing? Sure. Every time you do downtime, when you pass a downtime roll, click your clock. I love it. I think
it's a great tracking tool. You know, it's one of the best. So
yeah, I really love it. And then there's just a lot of talk about clocks. Progress clocks in play. So there's a whole section on using clocks. There's a really big example of play. I don't mind this one. I think some people that haven't used clock before, it's a new thing for them. It's just a lot. Okay, so then we hit action roll. Honestly, it took me like 2 days to read action roll. Like, it really did. It's, first of all, it's like the core mechanic of the game. Realistically, it's like 11 pages long.
Yeah.
So action roll.
I think the vast majority of it is going over the individual actions as they are.
Yeah,
right?
It's so breaking down what it looks like. It says action roll, and it says when the player chooses to do something, they do an action roll, and then blah 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 blah. To make an action roll, we go through 6 steps. In play, they flow together. So step 1, player states their goal for the action. You got that? So you state your goal. Okay. Step 2,
I want to kill this guy with my sword.
There you go. Okay, so let's fucking do this. Let's fucking do this, right? So your goal is to kill this guy with the sword, okay? The player chooses the action rating. So what action are you going to choose for kill your guy with the sword?
What was the violent action? Hold on.
Skirmish.
I've read I'm going to skirmish.
Okay, all right. So, you choose skirmish, okay? The GM then sets the position for the roll. We'll get to that. We're explaining it. The GM then sets the effect level for the action, okay? Not 1, but 2 levels of GM fiat and choosing what you want to do, how difficult it is. Again, I'll talk about my beef with that whole thing in a minute. You add any bonus dice you get. We'll get to that. And then the player rolls the dice and everyone judges a result. It's 6 steps to do all of that, right? Easy peasy. 10 pages later, we'll get to a summary of it. So let's go through this. And I feel like this is going to be the bulk of the rest of the show, is literally just getting through action roll. So
let's do it.
The player states their goal. That's number 1. You want to kill this guy, right? Your goal is a concrete outcome for your character, and you will achieve it by doing the obstacle can, right? The character's goal is pretty obvious in context. It's the GM's job to clarify. You said you want to stab the guy, and I said, okay, that sounds like skirmish to me. Theoretically, you could use wreck if you want to like break him through a door or something, but sounds like skirmish. We go skirmish. Okay, cool, done. We have a goal, right? Number 2, the player chooses the action rating, which is what we just. So I'm sorry. The first thing I want to do is like, so you want to stab this guy, right? How do you want to stab this guy? What do you want to do? You want to fight this guy? You're in a room one-on-one with them. Okay, so that's what's happening. You are fighting this person in this room, correct? Yes. You choose your action rating. You pick skirmish, right? So you get into a fight. That's happening. There's some gray area here because there's some overlap. That's fine. Okay, in my opinion, again, that's why you could shrink this down. But I do think that I'm curious about how the math of everything influenced the design of everything. Right. You know, there's like 0 through 4, 0 through 4. So I need 4 so I can have 4. But honestly, like if they got rid of 3 of those and it was like 9 actions with 3 attributes, you could chop some of that stuff off, remove a little bit of the overlap, and then you could just have everything go to 3 instead. And I'm curious how much the choosing the math had and because you could get rid of some of that stuff. Great piece of spot art. I wish more of this. This is like fucking assassin
Oh, yeah,
leaping off the wall.
Yeah.
This might be outside of like some of the full art pages. This piece is dope as fuck. Like this.
Yeah,
So
it's really
again,
cool.
for those in podcast land, it's like a thief jumping off the wall. Their whole bottom is shadowed. They just have like the Batman eyes, like just white coming off. You can see that their right arm has like a string of a whole roll of rope coming off, and they're just fucking going at it. And there's like a blast coming off behind them. Gorgeous piece of art here, super vibey, great. Okay, so then we get to the parts that I'm just not a huge fan of. This is where I need flowcharts. This is where I need algorithms. This is where it gets to me. So the GM sets the position. Okay, once a player chooses their action, they set a position. There's 3 positions: controlled, risky, and desperate. Okay, controlled is you have a golden opportunity, you're exploiting a dominant advantage, you set up for success. Risky, you go head to head, you're acting under duress, you're taking a chance. We know that's the base roll. Then there's desperate, you're in serious trouble, you're overreaching your capabilities, you're attempting a dangerous maneuver. You, sir, are 1-to-1 in a room fighting who are the bad guys called? Are they blue cloaks?
I'm fighting a guy.
You're fighting the guy. So I'm going to say that that's just risky. They don't have an advantage. You don't have an advantage. That's what's going on. All right. By default,
I thought we were doing this on the edge of a building.
I would still call that. I would say if you want to go desperate, I would say if you find yourself at the top of the tower with your heels on the edge and like 2 dudes in front of you and nowhere for you to go, and you say, okay, I want to fight now, I would say you're in desperate. Right? You know what I mean? Like you're in the shit. It's 2v1 and you're on the edge. So by default, everything is risky. Okay. And then there is just a lot of words about that. Choosing the position is important. Judgment call and stylistic choice for your game. We are very non-judgment call for the GM kind of people. I prefer referees versus GMs. Right? Like I feel like you feel mostly the same. Like I want the players to choose what they do. I want the dice to determine how they roll and go. So a lot of this, like I said, comes down to, it literally says choosing the position is an important judgment call and stylistic choice for your game. More controlled actions are safer, blah, blah, blah. More desperate, blah, blah, blah. There's no ironclad rule, blah, blah, blah. As a player, you're angling for a particular position. Ask the GM what you might do to get it. Ask them to clarify the situation. As a GM, you have final say over the position for the role, but explain and clarify as needed. Excuse me, especially when you're starting out. By discussing the position, you'll help everything, blah, blah, blah. You'll also set precedents that the players can build on to make better decisions in the future. Oh, so we got a controlled consort roll when we wine and dine them and showed them how friendly we are. Noted. That might be one of my least favorite like little paragraphs in the entire book because of how that extrapolates across every level of play. So you're telling me that the job of this is how I'm reading it. You're telling me that the job of the GM is to craft the player's behavior, because it's not you're not incentivizing behavior. That's very different. There's discourse happening. I'm not going to get into. It's so fucking dumb, but I feel like this is actually like crafting player behavior, right? Based on the consequence. Them, like you're training them. Yeah, based
what works,
on
what doesn't work in your narrative that you're running, instead of just being like, "This, I'm the referee. This is y'all's narrative. How it works is really up to you and the dice." You know,
right? And that's what I'm saying. Is it literally says, "Okay, you said you gave me this time, so that's what I'm going to do next time." And you can also say, in your brain, I don't necessarily want the players to be acting that way, so I'm going to make it desperate instead of risky. I'm going to make the effect lesser, not limited, not great. You know what I mean? Like there's such a way to craft player behavior versus incentivizing player behavior, which I think is very different. And I just feel like that's one of the things I don't like about DRs and CRs is it's very, the whole concept of a judgment call on what the players want to do. I don't know. I'm just not a fan. So anyway, so the GM sets the effect level. So this is the next level of levels, right?
Right.
So you do something and then there's 3 levels.
Listen, you're gonna make this is gonna be a desperate position, but it's gonna have a limited effect. You know, it's like
right. And I just don't see a reason to quantify this much. So anyway, so the effect level. Given the factors of the situation, the effect level is how much the action can accomplish. Limited, standard, or great. Okay? I'm not going to get into it deep here because there's plenty of effect stuff later. On page 24. And that's number 4. On number 5, you had bonus dice. And that is when you can get assistance from a teammate. Love that. They take 1 stress to help you, so you get 1 dice. And then for another bonus dice, you can either push yourself and take 2 stress, or you can accept a Devil's Bargain. Love Devil's Bargain. Don't know if it's don't know if it's an adjacent mechanic or if Trophy came first or if this came first, but I love both in both settings. It's slightly different, but it's the same kind of concept.
This came out long before Trophy. So
you think so?
This is from 2017.
When did Trophy come out?
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It's the same mechanic and it's great in both. It doesn't. Whoever it came out with first, they're perfect in both, and it doesn't matter. But anyway, so what the Devil's Bargain basically says is you can get a bonus dice. There's 2 ways to get bonus dice. Your crew helps you, or you do a Devil's Bargain. And basically, okay. So they said that Trophy is based on blades. Cool, great choice then. If John, fucking Devil's Bargain is one of the best things in this whole thing. Reckless scoundrels addicted to destructive vices. They don't always act in their own best interest. You can give them a Devil's Bargain. Common Devil's Bargains are collateral damage, unintended harm, sacrificing coin, betraying a friend, offending or angering a faction, starting, adding heat, suffering harm, all this kind of stuff. So basically, at any point, not just the GM, but you or other players or anybody can just be like, oh, you know what would be super fucking cool? Like, it's risky, but like if you did this, that would be dope. And the GM could just be like, yeah, that would be super dope. I'll give you an extra dice if you risk that, right? So the example is, I know your gang is savage. If we leave them alone here with the hostages, who knows what they'll do? I'm going to get all up in their faces and command them to keep their slagging hands off. And it's like, okay, dope. Here's the Devil's Bargain. You take 1 dice, right? But you go too far with your intimidation, and they're going to start a clock. The gang fights back is the name of the clock. Once it ticks 3 times, you've messed too hard with your other gang members, and they're basically going to mutiny. That's so fucking cool. Like, that's so narratively interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and that's basically anything you want. And I do like the explainer here. It says, don't push too hard with the bargain. Some people like them, some people don't. If you realize that someone doesn't really like them, stop trying to push people on it. I can imagine a scenario where people are like, oh yeah, that sounds cool, you should do it. And probably being like, nah, I don't really want to. You know what I mean? So choose to reject it if you don't want to. Yeah.
I'm always trying to take the most reckless thing possible. So I'm like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Turn that ship to 11, brother.
Right? I mean, just reject the consequences if you don't want them. So I love that. And then number 6, roll the dice and judge the result, right? So we know the mixed success. We know 4 through 5. We know 6. We know crits. We know everything. It's a whole lot of, it's a whole page on that. And then we have another summary, right? A player or GM calls for a roll, make an action roll when the character performs a dangerous or troublesome action. The player chooses the action rating to roll. Choose the action that matches what the character is doing in the fiction. The GM establishes the position and effect level of the action. The choice of position and effect is influenced strongly by the player's choice of action. Add up to 2 bonus dice, which for assistance or the Devil's Bargain, and then roll the dice pool and judge the outcome. The players and GM narrate the action together. This summary right here, as a flowchart, would be so helpful.
Yeah,
so really helpful. Great. Really, and then we have another explainer below that, right? So it's a little chart here. Again, this could have just been a flowchart, right? But action roll. 1d for action rating dot, plus 1 dice to have any assistance, plus 1 dice if you push yourself or accept the Devil's Bargain. Then there's 3 blocks here, 1 for controlled, risky, and desperate. I do like this because it gives you examples. So on a controlled action, you act on your terms. For a critical, you do increased effect. So basically, if you were going to have a limited effect, if you crit, you get to bump that up to, I don't remember what the second effect was. Regardless, you can bump it up, or if you're in the middle effect, you can bump it up to a great effect, right?
What was the other
on a
effect?
6, you do it. Yeah. On a 4 to 5, you hesitate, withdraw, and try a different approach, or else do it with a minor consequence. A minor complication occurs, and you have reduced effect. You suffer lesser harm. You end up in a risky position. 1 to 3, you falter. Press on by seizing a risky opportunity to withdraw. So do me a solid. I'm going to say that you have 2 in skirmish, and you're fighting this guy. We're not going to worry about like the clock part of HP and everything like that. Let's say instead that you're trying to push this guy off the top of that tower. So your skirmish roll is really just shoving him off. So it's a 1 action thing, right? You have 2 dice in that. So going from top to bottom here, right? If we go from the whole thing, roll to the end. Let's scroll back up to 1 through 6, right? Number 1, you're saying that you want to push this guy off the roof. I say dope, right. Okay? For the action rating, you're going to choose skirmish. Right? Okay. So then, moving on from there, I, as a GM, am going to set the position for the roll. I'm going to say it's risky. Okay. And then moving on from there, I'm then going to set the effect level. Okay. I'm going to say this is pretty much a standard effect. You're just going to push the guy off the edge. Maybe it's a great effect because he'll fucking die if you do. But that's about where we're at.
Yeah, it's risky with a great effect. Like, if you push him off the roof, he's dead. You know?
Yeah. Let's say this guy's a big beef boy, though. He looks rough. You don't have a teammate up here, so you can't ask assistance, right? So 2 options
ask assistance from God? Should I reach out to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ?
Yeah, you'll get the same response everyone else says.
So I go ahead and roll.
Right? No. Oh. So then you have a couple options here at the end, right? You don't have a teammate up here. You're trying to push this guy off. So there's ways to add bonus dice. 2 options. 1, you can push yourself. Take 2 stress and get an extra die, right? Or the other option is the devil's bargain. So I'll throw a devil's bargain out here, right? I'm going to give you a bonus die, right? But if you fail the roll, right, you go with him off the edge. You know that there is a lower awning, but it's still pretty far down before it hits the ground. So there is a possibility of potentially saving yourself even if you miss. But my question is, would you choose to push yourself, take a devil's bargain, or just run with your 2 die?
You gave me 2 bonus dice right now?
No. I'm saying you can either choose to push yourself or take a devil's bargain. Or nothing. You can just run with your dice that you have.
I think I'm going to run with dice that I have.
So you wouldn't push yourself to make sure you do this, because that would just take stress from you.
Well, okay. In reality, yes. I would like to see myself fail in this situation. But yeah. Let's say I push myself. I take the stress to give me another die.
So you don't take the devil's bargain. You take 2 stress and you roll 3d6. So roll 3d6 for me because you had 2 in skirmish and you're getting 1 added bonus die for pushing yourself. You just take 2 stress for it.
I rolled 2 1s and a 3.
Okay, so you got a 3. So judging from all of that, the effect and everything like that, you just straight up fail. You try to push this guy off, right? You go through the listed consequences. So let's see what the listed consequences. I said that was going to be just a risky situation. So on a 1 through 3, things go badly. You suffer harm, a complication occurs, you end up in a desperate position, you lose this opportunity. So here's what happens. You rush at this guy to push him over, right? A little hand fighting happens, and he actually just fucking like a bull toroing pushes you off. You actually skid off. You actually skid off the edge of the tower, fall, and are grasping onto the edge of the tower by your hands hanging off the edge now. That sucks.
And he reaches over and he goes, "Long live the king," and throws his hands off. And then my son comes down my body after it's trampled.
Yeah. So that's kind of how a whole turn could go. And although I do like it, I feel like doing that on every turn is a lot.
Yeah.
Every action that a player does is that much conversation.
I would probably make, I don't know, I can think of ways to handle this where it's like, if it's that much work to do a single thing, I would make things bigger. You know, like I would be like, they'd be doing a whole scene with that one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think that is the context here. I think that's where like effect and a bunch of other stuff comes in. But if that is what you're doing for every single thing, like 5e is slow. We've never played this. I want to play it. I want someone to run it as written so we can play it. Just reading it though, that feels like this whole game feels like you're not really playing the game a lot of the time. You're more doing a role and then watching a TV show play out in front of you.
Yes.
Even like setting up the plane and stuff. It just seems like a lot. So Anyway, so we're only on page 24 of 300 something pages. So let's cruise through the rest of this and then we'll get through the rest. So there's a whole section on effect here, right? So great, standard, and limited are your three, right? So great, you achieve more than the usual. How does the extra effort manifest? Standard, you achieve what you expected as normal, and limited, you achieve a partial or weak effect. So that's something you're choosing as you're doing the actions that you're doing. There's also ticks here. Because if you're like the quality or no, where's the section here about ticks? What are the ticks for again? You assess the effect level, then it's needed. I think it's like if you're ticking off a clock, you can, these are the ticks you get for each of those things if you want to do that. We'll get that to in a second. So assessing factors, potency, scale, and quality. So this is another three things that you have to assess. This is what I'm saying is like every time you do get to a next step, there's like three more things you have to do during that step to get back to the, like the pie chart or the flow chart would be a series of like breakdown and the three more and then breakdown and three more, the breakdown and three more, you know? So like you're already getting to a point where like you want to do a thing. So then I have to set I have to set the position, and then within the position, there's three things in the position, and then I have to set the effect, and then there's three things within the effect. But within the three parts of the effect, there's three more things to determine why you're doing the effect: potency, quality, and scale. So it's just like, I feel like every time you get to another level, you're getting like 6 levels deep before you can just like collapse it all back down and decide what's going to happen.
You know,
it's just, again, like I want to play it. I want to feel how this feels, because reading it just feels like a lot. So when considering factors, there's zero effect, extreme effect, like just potency is for a particular weakness, take extra time or a bigger risk, or influence arcane powers. Quality or tier is for stuff. So a fine item counts as 1 bonus in quality, stacking with tier. It's just a lot. There's a whole section of dominant factors here, which continues to talk about scale. We're talking about like one subpart of a subpart of a subpart and giving it basically a whole page. Trading position for effect. After factors are considered and the GM has announced the effect level, a player might want to trade position for effect. For instance, they're going to make a risky roll with a standard effect. They can instead push their luck and make a desperate roll with a great effect. I do like that in the context of being able to do that. You basically, like, I say, okay, it's 2 middles, and you can say, okay, I go 1 down to go 1 up. Like, I don't mind that. Yeah. It's a trade-off. Effects in the fiction. It's a narrative game. Like, obviously, like, you should be narrating as you go. Why do we do this? The reason we assess effect is to set expectations and make the fictional situation more clear so everyone is on the same page. By assessing effect and describing it in fiction, the players understand how much progress they're making and how much they're risking. By understanding effect, the group understands how many actions will be needed to achieve their goals.
Cool.
None of that is so much of this, like this whole section, GM section. Why we do this goes in the GM section. Effects in the fiction, GM section. Like half of the trading position
honestly,
for effect,
I could not
GM
imagine
section.
bringing this to my table with my group or saying the PDF to my group and be like, hey, y'all are gonna read
330 pages.
Like, okay, so you're gonna read these pages, not this page. Skip that. You're gonna read this page.
I would literally have to like X out pages, like break this up more. Like so much of like assessing factors. Like honestly, the players don't really need half of this shit. And like the whole dominant factors thing, players don't need that. Put it into a GM section. Why do we do this? Yeah. Why do we do this? The GM can decide that later. Get rid of it. Consequences happen. Like, kind of, except when you don't want them to, because you can just make it not happen. So another great piece of art here. I love this vibey, like eye patch lady, dope as fuck.
Right.
Setting, and then here's more. A whole other section about setting position and effect. A whole nother page. Like, I just don't understand why this is in here at all, as opposed to just moving it to a GM section. And it's got its own title header.
And then it gets weird because the next, like, oh, not to jog through this one, but like, yeah, this is here, and then immediately after it goes to resistance and armor.
Consequences and harm, and then
Oh yeah,
so,
consequences and harm.
But we already talked about position and effect. So why is there a whole nother page with a title header on position and effect? When you start learning the game, you can step through the process with deliberation and practice. GM section. Players don't need this. Go away. And then there's a whole page of examples. I like examples. It's a lot of examples. Again, like, I've never thought that too many examples is going to be a bad thing. It's too much. It's too
I know
much.
usually we're on the opposite end. We're just like, man, I could use a couple examples of this game being played.
Yeah. Consequences and harm. So we're still under, like, I think this is where I really feel like action roll kind of starts to peter off, because the setting of it, like effect and position, is part of the action roll. Consequences is really like what happens after and whatever. So, but like we literally just went through like 11 pages for just the action roll. So enemy actions, bad circumstances, these are consequences. Consequences are reduced effect, complication, lost opportunity, a worse position, or harm. And there's a breakdown for each of those. Reduced effect, you reduce the effect. Complication, there is a complication. They can be serious, they can be less serious. You can get you can add heat. You can get 2 heat for there's a serious complication. You don't inflict a complication. I do like this. This is good direction, and honestly, most of it could be gone except for this. But still for the GM, don't inflict a complication that negates a successful roll. Like if it is a 4 to 5 mixed success, it is a yes, but. Like if you're trying to corner the enemy, you don't say the enemy escapes its complication. They did get to corner it, but the enemy might pull out a gun and put it in your face. Like, so don't negate the player's positive actions just because for a complication. Lost opportunity. Again, like, so using the example of play that we did earlier, you miss the guy, you're hanging from the ceiling, and instead of the guy pushing you off, he just chooses to run. Boom, yeah, lost opportunity. Yeah. Worst position. You're hanging from the edge of the building. You didn't take any harm, but you could suffer harm. So the harm section is a very specific mechanical section that should go over. So when you suffer harm, you record a specific injury on your character sheet and the level of harm you suffer. If you suffer lesser harm, record it. So there's 3 rows of harm. There's from bottom to the top, it's 1, 2, 3, right? So if you suffer lesser harm, you record it in the bottom row. If you suffer moderate, it's in the middle. If you suffer greater harm, it's at the top. And then you have a certain number of harms, like types of harm that you can suffer in each level, right? So if it's two types of harm on level 1, basically what this says is if you suffer another level 1 harm, which is lesser harm, there's nowhere to put it. You actually bump it up into level 2. And et cetera, et cetera. If you suffer level 3 harm and you've already filled out level 3, you suffer level 4. The examples here on level 1 are drained and battered. And the example on level 3 is a shattered leg. And it gives you some effects of it. So, and it gives you lists of examples of harm, right? So lesser, battered, drained, whatever, moderate, exhausted, deep cut, concussion, severe, impaled, broken leg, shot in the chest, fatal, electrocuted, drowned, stabbed in the heart. You know, I love this. I think this is a super fun mechanic. I love the idea of a lack of HP entirely in this. Bad guys basically have clocks. Good guys have a series of harms they can take, but it's all mechanic. It's all narrative based. And if you have lesser wounds, your wounds just get worse basically, and they go more. That's great. Resistance and armor. Like, so again, you suffer the consequences. When the PC suffer a consequence they don't like, you can choose to resist it. The GM, just tell the GM, quote, "No, I don't think so. I'm resisting that."
Okay. See, yeah, I mean, I get it. This is more of a narrative game. It's more of like that fantasy game where you get to play the TV show where you have plot armor. So like, for this game, I understand it. Like, I know it's something you don't like, but like, for what this game is, I definitely understand why it's here, you know?
To a point, I just feel like a lot of this stuff like throws me into third person. Like I feel like I'm watching this game be played. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It just, because you're like, well, this happens. Well, let me retcon that real quick. Then I feel like I'm just like, I don't know. So anyway, so you make a roll, use your character's attributes, insight, prowess, or resolve, and to get rid of the consequences of those things. The character suffers. Here's the mechanic for actually resisting, right? So the character suffers 6 stress when they resist. So you automatically suffer 6 stress. And then you minus the highest die of your resistance roll. So if you rolled a 4, you'd only suffer 2 stress. If you roll a 6, 0. If you roll a crit, you actually get to clear 1 stress. I love that mechanic. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get this. It's like, you know, for me, it's like, okay, well, then you fall off the building. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to like resist with prowess and I'm going to roll into my landing. It's like, yeah, you crit succeed. You have a very cinematic moment where it's like you roll a perfect landing because of your training, and like you clear what's just like, gotta go catch him, and you run off. Like, I get it. It's a very cinematic game. It's a very like fun, over the top heist game. It's not supposed to be gritty, you know, and like everyone's dying. Your characters are not going to die in this. It seems like, you know.
I think it would be difficult, I think. I mean, the fact that you have so few types of harm that you can receive, but the amount that you can resist and retcon and do stuff does make it difficult. I mean, so in the context of like that is just how this game goes. I don't think
it's fair to say that it's retconning. It's not. It's reacting further to the narrative. It's building on to that narrative. The thing still happens, and then you do this, you know? Like me blocking a hit that I took, or like being able to shake it off, like, is not retconning. I still took the hit, you know?
So, I see what you're saying. I think, so the example here real quick, Ian's character, Silas, is in a desperate skirmish with several red sash duelists, and one of them lands a blow with their sword. Since the position was desperate, the GM afflicts severe harm, modified by factors, blah. They tell Ian to record level 3 harm, gut stabbed. So you get stabbed in the gut, right? Because of you do something, you fail, they stab you as a response to something you did, and then you decide to resist the harm instead. The GM says they can reduce the harm by 1 level if he resists it. Ian rolls 3 dice for Silas's prowess attribute and gets a 5. Silas takes 1 stress, and the harm is reduced from 3 to 2. So you got stabbed in the gut. You say, no, I don't want to get stabbed in the gut. And you say, okay, so roll me a roll. And you say, okay, it didn't quite hit your gut. It hit your ribs instead.
Yeah. Okay. So that example is kind of retconning, you know, but like I can definitely see it. What's up? Go ahead.
No, go for it. No. So what are you saying?
I feel like, yeah, maybe for the harm stuff, because there are levels to the harm. But I feel like for most other thing, it's like, it's not, I wouldn't let them retcon and be like, okay, like narratively, you're going to resist this situation. Like, what does that look like? Cause it's not going to not happen, you know? Right.
Again, I just need to, I'm going to stop complaining that the way this game goes is not the way that I want it to go, and just accept that is the way it goes and base it off of that. So in my mind, action means consequence. In this game, action means consequences that you can then resist. That is how things are.
It's a narrative forward thing. Like, it really is just pure narrative, you know?
But see, I just disagree with the idea that this is narrative at all. I feel like that's almost entirely mechanical. Like, you do something mechanically, you suffer the consequences of that mechanically, and then mechanically you choose to not suffer the consequences of that. I feel like it's just a series of like moving your stress into your roll, into your stress, and like doing
I agree
all of that.
Part, but I think it's all about the story that you're telling at the table, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, like I said, that's why I said I feel like I'd be watching this game in third person. Yeah, I wouldn't feel like I'm playing the game. So I feel like I'm watching the story.
So
yeah, which is why on screen, off screen kind of fits. Anyway, so moving on. There's a section here on resistance roll, armor. If you have a type of armor that applies to the situation, you can mark an armor box to reduce or avoid a consequence. I like that, because what's the point of armor? There is no HP. So what do you really want it to do? Well, you want to be able to resist something. Okay, you get to resist something. Good. Boom, you got armor. You use it. Now you don't have armor anymore. Death. There are a couple ways for PC to die. You can suffer level 4 fate and not be able to resist it, so you die. If they need to record a harm at level 3 and it's already filled and they suffer catastrophic consequence, which really just means level 4, it's the same, you die. And then when your character dies, you have a couple of options. You can promote an NPC, or you can transfer your character to a ghost playbook. And a ghost character can later become a hull or a vampire. So basically you're a ghost in the crew now. Cool. Which is one of the first times I really
become a vampire. So
I think that's dope as shit. I would almost, I don't know now. So fortune roll is now the roll that you do. Basically, it's when the GM wants to let the dice have a go, and they don't want to determine. It literally says like, you want to not make the decision, just let the dice do it. Okay, cool. That's one of the times where you're actually not putting it on the GM entirely.
Right.
So you need to make a determination about the situation PCs aren't involved in. You do some stuff. What if the outcome is uncertain? Who cares? So when you make a fortune roll, you may assess any trait rating to determine the dice pool. When a faction takes an action with uncertain outcome, you might use their tier. When a gang operates, they might use their quality, magnitude. When a PC gathers information, if no trait applies, roll 1d for sheer luck or create a dice pool based on the situation. If the two parties are opposed, make a fortune roll for each side. The fortune roll is a good tool to allow GMs to manage various moving parts. There's examples here. The fortune roll, basically, yeah, like if you're not sure and nothing applies, do a fortune roll. And you can make a dice pool or not. That's it.
Perfect.
Gathering information. I mean, it's a whole page to say you gather information. So it's depending on, just like everything else, it's how much information you gather by using mixed success in the world and how that can fully investigate the fictional world. You can only really try to do it once, and you can use things like surveying, studying, or prowling. That's about it. Investigation. Some questions are too complex to answer immediately with a single gather roll, so you can actually turn investigation into a long-term project or a clock. Love that. So a whole section here on gathering information. Ask a question and make an action roll or a fortune roll. The GM answers you honestly with a level of detail determined by the effect level. So you're still this is the part that also bugs me a little bit. They're asking you for information, right? And then you're setting the level of information that you want them to be able to get. Because you can say, well, I think that would be limited. And then I'm now determining immediately that regardless of your role, you get limited information.
Right.
Because I've already set the effect.
Instead of how well you roll, instead of it being like a mixed success,
Right. Because even if you get a mixed success, right, so you're still setting the level of effect for what you get, which would just be whatever you set it to be anyway. Yeah. So you're still really putting the how much information that you gather onto the GM. There's a whole page of examples here. Great. Moving on. Great piece of art here with two guys knife fighting, two people knife fighting with like a Victorian scene in the background. Yep, love that one. That's great. There's a big example of play here, which is great. It's a lot. It's two whole pages.
Yeah.
It's
one, and then there's another one's PC versus PC.
Well, yeah,
it's not an example. It's like a
whole nother thing. Honestly, you use the same methods as you do for everything else. That's it. All you do, it really says is to make sure everyone understands, collaborate on the outcomes, collaborate on everything together, make sure everything's above board, and then do it. Right? So coin exists and it's got a monetary value. So this is a little bit of lore that pops into the rules. I feel like there's very little lore in the regular base rules. I feel like the ghost part was one of the first ones. This is one of the first ones. So basically coin is a term. It's a slang term for a big old specific slab of gold. Mm-hmm. I do like this little bit of like, this is how to write rules in an evocative way. The term is not evocative, but like in an immersive way. So the term is Alcarosian slang from the days of the Imperial Treasury, which minted special bank coins of solid gold, each one valuable enough to cover a major transaction. Quote unquote, flashing a coin was considered an ostentatious display of wealth. These days, everyone uses small river pieces for currency called slugs or scales. That's a great couple of lines to really set something that you could, like, giving character slang to use in your world is such a really good way to increase immersion.
Also, did you know that I'm half Alcarosian? So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah, look at you. Here flashing a coin.
Erosian? I don't know. Whichever way you say that thing.
Accorosian. I'll say accorosian.
Yeah, accorosian. So, yeah.
There's a list here
side.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Makes a difference. So basically it says little like pocket silver doesn't matter. I like that. And then it has monetary values.
Abstract away my silver and copper. I don't want to think about that shit.
No. Oh, no. Monetary values. 1 coin is a full purse of silver and it's a week's wages. 2 coins is a fine weapon. 4 coins is a satchel of silver, a month's wages. 6 coin exquisite gold. There's 8 coins. There's 10 coins. 10 coins is like a small house or a whole horse. But again, using 4, anything more than 4 is impractical. You have to put it in your bold stash. You can store up to 4 coin, but that can be upgraded later with a vault, where you can do more. And then if you have more than what you can carry on you or keep in your vault, you have to spend it. I like that. Like, you can't carry around just bags of fucking money. Like, it can't be Scrooge McDuckin. So you spend coin on downtime activities. Yeah. You spend coin on downtime activities, entanglements, like all sorts of stuff like that. Stash and retirement. I like this a lot. When you mark your character's final trauma and retire, the amount you have stashed away determines how good your life is afterwards. It doesn't matter because you're done in the game anymore, but I love it because it does matter.
I do like that though. Like, you're like, like they got too beat up to keep heisting, and then they retired with a simple home or apartment with small comforts. He operates a tavern still to this day.
Yeah.
You go to that tavern, you see your retired character who's behind the bar. I love
that's
shit
what I was
like
gonna say. That's NPC, baby. Like,
yeah. You know what I would love to adapt this and run in? Have you ever read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson?
I just can't get into Brandon Sanderson.
Well, you're wrong. So Mistborn's an amazing book, but there's like
that's what I hear.
There's a heisty like gang of superpowered people, not superpowered, but they have abilities, and I would love to run this as that,
Yeah. I'll have to read it. I mean, me, Mistborn feels, at least from what I've heard, it's high fantasy, and I love grimdark. I'll take Joe Abercrombie all day.
It's a pretty non-happy fantasy. So,
oh, is it dark?
Oh yeah, it's fairly dark.
Oh, but it's high magic though, right?
It's definitely not high fantasy. It's definitely a fantasy, but it's the concept is that the bad guy won at one point in time.
Oh, love that. Yeah. I'll get around to it. The only Sanderson I ever read was when he finished Wheel of Time after Robert Jordan died. So I'll get around to it eventually. Everyone.
The best Wheel of Time novels. Gotcha. Yeah.
Every time I think of Brandon Sanderson, I don't know why I immediately go to like those two super nerdy writers in Brooklyn Nine-Nine that are like always arguing with each other. Then there's like a murder and shit. Anyway, someone out there knows what I'm talking about. But I'll get to it eventually. I'm currently reading Elric from Moorcock right now. Actually, I've never read it before. Excited. Finished the first book. It's really good. Anyway, so stats. It happens. So the faction game. Again, we're going to start cruising through sections of this because we're already an hour and 50 minutes in, and we don't need to talk about a lot of this. So the faction game. This is how crazy how this dense all of this is we're almost 2 hours in, and we didn't read 80% of the words that were in here.
Right.
So the faction game, there's tiers. Duskwall is a city of crime. Take a look at the factions page on 282. So then let's just get to that later. We'll go to 282 and go over that. You have a hold. You can develop that with the reputation, so you can expand on your hold. That's cool. I like that. Turf is interesting. It gives you permanent rep so that it's easier to hold on to your stuff. Everything in Duskwall is already claimed. You have to take it from someone if you want it. That's cool. I like that.
I'm good to skip this part, but just for the record, for anyone who's listening, this is potentially my favorite part of this.
Well, then don't skip it. Let's go over it.
No, we're good. We have so much to go through. I'm fine with that. Like, buy the book.
Okay.
But like, I think if you even want to run a faction game and something else, like, there's a lot of good to be taken from here on like ways to like compartmentalize and think about factions.
I do like when I read it. This again, really, I feel like this is another level of play. It doesn't give me Kingdom vibes, but it is like a whole different meta level of play.
There's another, yes, absolutely.
And I do like the concept of an upper metal of play in theory. To me, it doesn't feel fun in the way that Kingdoms does in like creating lineages and murdering your children and shit. But I think this is I do agree that I feel like
children.
Yeah. And then your friends. I do think this is a really good way to do a meta level play where the map is already filled out and you have to take parts of it. It's really interesting. Yeah. There's faction levels and of a variety of ways where you can increase and decrease your hold and increase the size of your claim, seizing claims. There's a whole map section. And I mean, this is a very dense section. There's a whole map here on ways that you can choose to expand your turf and how things work, and how to seize a claim. What happens when you lose a claim? It's a lot, and there's a lot to it. PC advancement. I do like the way PCs advance in here. I feel like it's extremely similar to Fist. Basically, every character has a trigger, a way that they are supposed to act,
right?
Which is again crafting styles of play. But if you trigger that, you can then get XP. So during the session, you mark an XP when you make a desperate action roll. You mark 1 XP in the attribute for the action you rolled. For example, if you roll skirmish action, you mark 1 XP in prowess. When you roll in a group action that's desperate, you also mark an XP. At the end of the session, review XP triggers on your character sheet. For each one, mark 1 XP if it happened at all, or mark 2 XP if it happened a lot. So your playbook specific trigger, for example, could be address a challenge with violence or coercion if you're a cutter. To address a challenge, your character should attempt to overcome a tough obstacle or threat. It doesn't matter if the action is successful or not. You get XP either way. So basically, by acting the way your character is supposed to act, you get to mark XP. And anytime you make a desperate roll, you get to mark XP down in that attribute. It's
very cool.
You may mark end of session XP on any XP tracks, blah, blah, blah. When you fill an XP track, clear all the marks and take an advance. When you take an advance from a playbook track, you may choose an additional special ability. When you take an advance from an attribute, you may add an additional action dot to one of your actions under the attribute. Cool. I like that. Again, basically it says narratively push your character into acting how your character should act. There's crew advancement here. I don't know why it's here, not under the crew section, but it's very similar. The crew specific triggers, there's contend with challenges above your current station, etc., etc. A lot of stuff to be had in the way that crews go, and you can change your playbook or crew type if you choose at some point. We're finally into chapter 2 on page 51.
That was the basics. We just finished the basics of the game.
That was okay. Quick little 30-second rant. 80% of that is not the basics. 80% of that needs to be shunted into a GM section, and the players don't need it. They don't need it. Like, the usability on this book plummets when I feel like I just read like 50 pages of block text that I don't need, that go into nuance that I don't need. It's a lot.
It is a little bit, you know? It's a little bit. So
that could be 20 pages max.
Yeah. I think it could definitely be trimmed down quite a bit. So, I mean, we've read whole games that have like a good amount of mechanics that were 50 pages, you know?
Yeah. We've read whole games that play similar to this in like 8 pages.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying, I don't think it shouldn't have been written. I just don't think it needs to be in this section.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of that is, not in the basic section. So
it's just not the basics.
But scoundrels.
Scoundrels are your characters.
You're scoundrels in this game. That's who your players are.
I love it. Great word. Great choice of word. I like it. Scum is in Merkborg. Scoundrels in this. Love it. So, character creation. You choose a playbook. Cutter, Hound, Leech, Slide, Spider, Whisper. Pick one. What do you got?
Slide.
Okay. Ooh. Of all the ones, the one that you... Okay. So, slides are good at social situations and subterfuge. Play a slide if you want to manipulate and deceive people. There's a page here with a little breakdown by each one. Love it.
Perfect.
Really good. Great page here. When you choose a playbook, you're choosing a set of special abilities. There's 2 paragraphs here when you didn't really need. There's 3 paragraphs here. They didn't really need to explain a lot of that. You choose a heritage. You may be of any heritage of your choice. There's a bunch here. There's Akaros.
Which we all know that my mother, it's from Akaros. So
yeah. When you choose it, you circle it on the list of your playbook. Then you write a detail about your family life on the line above. For example, you can choose Skovlin heritage. You write factory worker from Lockport, now refugee. Love that. There's a whole section here which is less. It talks about the areas of the world. So Akaros and the Imperium, the Dagger Isles, Iruvia, which is a rich desert kingdom, Severos, which is like the wild rest of the empire, Skullivan, which talked about, Tycheros. I like that it doesn't just say here is what it is. I like that it gives you a little breakdown of like where they come from and like kind of like the people that are there, so you can pick that a little bit better. I do like that. So you pick a playbook, then you pick a heritage, then you pick a background. Okay, so we already know you're Akarosian. So you choose a background, right? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 backgrounds, it looks like. So there's academic, labor, law, trade, military, noble, and underworld. So you're noble. Okay, well, you are in the empire, the Imperium. So the noble is a dilettante, a courtier, the scion of a fallen house. That's you. So you are the slide half Akarosian noble, right? What's your line about the Akarosians and like your noble? Are you a fallen house? Is it like what
I think fallen house,
makes sense. So you might still be known in circles, but you're not at the toppy top because you don't exist anymore, but you still have that in to be a slide because you can still manipulate. So you're kind of like on the fringes of the nobility now, but still part of it. Dig it. Assign your 4 action dots. Yeah. So your playbook begins with 3 action dots already placed. We'll look at that on slide. You get to add 4 more dots. At the start of the game, no action rating may have more than 2 dots unless a special ability tells you otherwise. So put fair. 1 dot in any action that you feel reflects your character's heritage. Acarosian in the Empire.
Oh, I gotta look at the actions. There's so many of them.
Don't forget the bookmarks.
I know that I'm looking at them. They are very usable bookmarks. So
yeah,
some actions. Well, maybe
you get 1 in heritage and 1 in background. So you're Acarosian.
For
you are in the largest, most industrialized.
Heritage, I think I'm gonna put 1 in command.
Okay, because you're noble, makes sense. Absolutely.
Right. And then I think as a slide, I already have just 1 in consort, so I'd probably put the other 1 in consort as well to give me 2 in consort.
Boom, and that's the max you can have. Perfect.
That's the max.
And then you can assign. You can assign 2 more dots.
I'm a min maxer every day, so
there you go. Get it. I mean, there's so few dots in this. 2 random dots anywhere you want.
I got 1 in rec and 1 in skirmish.
All right, so you are straight up libertine. You get down when the alcohol's a drinking. Okay, we got it. All right, so then you get to choose a special ability, and you choose 1 close friend and 1 rival, which is interesting. When we go to a sheet, we'll look at that a little bit more. You choose 1 vice. I dig the vices. So vices is what you have to indulge in to deal with stress. So faith, gambling, luxury, obligation, pleasure, stupor, or weird.
Luxury.
Yeah.
It's luxury.
So expensive or ostentatious displays of opulence. That's what you go for. So you could actually write down where do you go for your ostentatious displays of luxury? Do you go to court? Do you go to balls?
I go to balls. I go to the very there's nobility, they have these very semi-weekly balls when you have a lot of nobility together for the youths to get together or just to show off and peacock, All
right. So listen,
I wore my big rings,
Mm-hmm. So you indulge in balls to get rid of stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have your name already. Did you say your name at the beginning?
No.
Oh, what was your name at the beginning of the top of the?
Oh, it was Danny Ocean from Ocean's 11.
Oh, that's right. Right.
Yeah, fuck yeah, he's Danny Ocean. So
Danny Ocean, hey, makes sense. That's a very Acarosian name.
Yeah.
Ocean is a family name. Yeah. Record your name, alias, and look. You just put your name, whatever alias you want, and the look. You write that down. You review the details, including your experience triggers and whatnot. There's a whole page of names here. There's a whole page of family. So there is names here. Danny's not on here, but that's fine. That's fine. You are Danny Ocean. Yeah. There's a whole list of names, family names, aliases, looks. I like that. Man, woman, ambiguous, concealed, affable, bony. And then there's a whole section on what you wear, collared shirt, knit sweater. So I like the lists here. I like that it's lists, not roll tables too. I don't think this needs roll tables here.
No,
I think list is
though.
great. Yeah. And then it just walked you through character creation, and then it gives you a character creation summary. I would have almost wanted this before the section we just read, but it's fine. So again, number 1, choose a playbook. Number 2, choose a heritage. Number 3, choose a background. Number 4, assign the 4 dots you have. Number 5, choose your special ability, which we'll get to in a second. Number 6, you choose a close friend and a rival. Number 7, you choose your vice. Number 8, you record your name and alias. Then you get into your loadout.
This is the cleanest part of the book.
It's nice. That I feel like the amount of information we just got in that was more than enough with a good summary at the end, and then you move on. Loadout, you have access to all the items in your character sheet for each operation. Decide on your character's load. During the operation, you may set your character, say that your character has an item on hand by checking the box for the item you want to use, up to a number of items equal to your chosen load. Your load also determines your movement speed and conspicuousness. So if you're only having 1 through 3 load, you're light, so you can move fast and conspicuous. 4 through 5 is a normal load. 6 is a heavy load. And 7 through 9 is an encumbered load. Basically, you can't do shit, so don't be encumbered. Some abilities have mule, which is fine. Some items count as 2. There's a whole list here for actions. I don't understand why this page is here instead of way earlier. Am I missing something?
It's a cool little reference when you need to apply your points. I mean, I guess you'd have a character sheet. So, but I mean, if you're I really quickly need to read what all the actions are. I mean, that it kind of makes you not need it earlier in the book, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It does lead directly into the character sheets.
Yeah.
So it is nice to have it right before you get into the characters. So
I would maybe have taken it out from earlier in the book and put it here. There's a lot moving around to be done. So
yeah. So let's go to slide and just run through. We'll run through a character sheet real quick.
It's a playbook.
Sorry for anyone watching this.
For those of y'all listening, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a huge fan of playbooks. Actually, this is my favorite part of anything that's kind of tangentially related to PBTA. Like, I like it, you know?
Oh, interesting. This is the part that I'm not going to say I don't like playbooks, but I'm going to say that
I'm the only one. Every time we talk to anybody, I'm the only one who likes this. And it's fine. I totally accept that rule, but I do like this part.
I feel like a lot of games do this exact same thing without calling them playbooks. I don't know what it is about these, but I also don't like moves and the entire concept of moves. I think it bothers me for a lot of the reasons people are discoursing.
I don't really like moves that much either, so I'm kind of with you on that.
But I don't mind the playbooks. I mean, you're just crafting a specific type of character, and that's fine. So anyway, so slide, you are a subtle manipulator and a spy. When you play a slide, you earn XP when you address a challenge with deception or influence. That is your XP trigger. Deception or influence. Makes sense because you're a disgraced, not disgraced, but a fallen noble and shit like that. Right. So you started with consort and sway, right? That's your actions you have. 1 in consort, 2 in sway. Your starting builds. So if you want some guidance when you assign your 4 action dots,
I do like this part.
Yeah, I do really like this. And I like that it says guidance, not pick one. So where did you put your other points? Oh, you.
Doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
you definitely would have. I'm the grifter, so
yeah. With wreck and skirmish, you sound like the slightly violent libertine, but it's whatever. So sly friends and rivals. So you have to pick. There's a list here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm curious why just 5 people, and you have to make 1 a friend and 1 a rival. I love this part narratively. This is kind of like the I know a guy. You know what I mean? I love that concept. So you have a Brill, a drug dealer, Bazo Baz, a gang leader, Clera, a tavern owner, Nerix, a prostitute, and Harker, a jailbird. So who is a friend and who's a foe?
I think the jailbird is my friend.
Okay.
Who helped me out on one of my maybe less reputable ventures, or when I got in a fight at some point. And then I think the tavern owner is my rival because I got to fight in their tavern. And now we're at odds. So
there you go. So don't go in that tavern. And then you get to choose 1 special ability. So going through these real quick, we got Rook's Gambit, Cloak and Dagger, Ghost Voice, like looking into a mirror, a little something on the side, Mesmerism, Subterfuge, and Trust in Me. So which one?
I think I'm going with a little something on the side.
Okay. All right. So at the end of each downtime phase, you earn +2 stash, bro.
Yeah. So
you stashing.
Yeah. Just trying to, make money to buy ridiculous clothing to wear the balls,
Well, that makes a ton of sense because you can cash out your stash. One of the things that we didn't talk about earlier, when you cash out your stash, you only get like half in coin. But it makes sense for you to want to keep up your appearances, because I can only imagine that a lot of your appearance is false borrowed money, and that's like why you basically do this, I assume, is to keep up appearances of your nobility even though you fell. So that's dope. And then there's a list of items: fine clothes and jewelry, a disguise kit, a fine disguise kit, we may remember because that's like a +1, fine loaded dice, trance powder, and a cane sword. So I think it said basically you choose the amount of load that you have, right? But at any time you can decide what those items are later. So if you say I'm going to start with 3 load, at any point you can say, okay, well then I have the cane sword, and then I have the fine jewelry and stuff like that. So that is a character, and then we can get to the crew, which is the next section. Regardless of how your crew is formed, they all have one thing in common: they exist to create a legacy. There's crew creation. So basically, assassins, bravos, cults, hawkers, shadows, and smugglers. So if you were part of a crew, which one are you picking for your noble guy?
For noble guy, I think I'm going with shadows. You know,
I was gonna say shadows or smugglers feels good for you.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So shadows are thieves and spies. They execute burglaries, espionage, robbery, sabotage, all that kind of stuff. So
I'm going to
choose a
get
crew type.
info from, I'm going to these like parties with these nobles and get fake like drinking with them to pump them for info. You know.
Exactly. And blackmail and shit. You know.
Yeah.
Get them to do stuff they shouldn't be doing. So once you've chosen, grab your crew sheet. Your crew begins with 2 coin in its coffers. You are tier 0 with stronghold and 0 rep. You pick an initial reputation and layer. There's ambitious, brutal, daring, honorable, professional, savvy, subtle, and strange. Given this group of characters and their previous escapades, what initial reputation would you like to have? So what's your reputation? What is the reputation of your crew? Savvy,
What are
subtle,
my options again?
ambitious, brutal, daring, honorable,
Okay,
professional, savvy. Figured. Yep. You pick a layer. There's an example here: a half-sunken grotto, abandoned watchtower, unassuming back room, abandoned house, junked rail car. Any of those work. You establish hunting grounds.
Back room, I think. You know.
Your back room, yeah. You feel back room.
Back room,
door even. Yeah. So your crew is brand new, but you have chosen one small part of a district for your hunting grounds. So the entire city is divided in larger factions. The GM will tell you which faction claims the area, so you can pay them off with 1 coin in exchange for room to work. You can pay the faction 2 coin as a show of respect and gain some status, or you can keep your money and take -1 status with that faction. So you can basically either just be equal, in their favor or out of their favor, but you have to pick a section and then start working from there. Yeah, so the crew gets a special ability, the crew gets upgrades. You can pick a faction, you can pick a favorite contact for your crew. There's various crew upgrades are like a carriage house, a boathouse, training, a hidden layer, quality. So it's really about like your area.
Right.
And then you get a cohorts, which are your gangs and experts. So you can get adepts, rooks, rovers, skulks, or thugs to be part of your gang, of your crew. And then when you get an expert, your expert has extra abilities like a doctor or an investigator. And they have quality equal to your current crew tier +1. So the better your crew, the better your experts can be. And they get 2 edges, 1 or 2 edges, and an equal number of flaws. So they could be fearsome, independent, loyal, tenacious, but then they would also be principled, savage, unreliable, or wild on top of that. A section here on your cohort, which is your gangs or experts, the harm and healing that they can do, how you can use them. And school part, I think the crew part is the part that shines more for me than anything. There's a whole page here. There's a whole page here for like the crew summary. I don't understand why the summaries are at the end instead of the beginning. I would have rather seen this in the beginning. Yeah. And then it breaks down into the crew sections. So
yeah.
You picked what kind of crew did you pick? The shadows.
Yeah, shadows.
Okay, so real quick, going over a crew table, it's going to be very similar to a character table. So it starts with your starting upgrades, which is for you prowess and a hidden layer. You choose your favorite operating type in your hunting grounds: burglary, espionage, robbery, or sabotage. You have your contacts, which is they are people. And then you get shadow upgrades, which are elite rooks, elite skulls, underground maps, thief rigging. There's a whole map here for claims, similar to the turf area that you were talking about before. So this talks about drug dens, gambling dens, all that kind of stuff. And then you have special abilities as a shadow in the same way. So your actual special abilities as a crew actually gives your character bonuses too. So for example, pick one.
Patron.
Okay, so what is a patron?
When you advance a tier, it costs half the coin it normally would. Who is your patron? Why do they help you?
There you go. That's dope. There's a lot of narrative in a fallen house that also has a patron now.
That's exactly why I went for it, you know?
Yeah, that's dope. Okay, we're almost halfway through the book now. So we're gonna cruise here. So the score. So it's this whole section here basically is just how to set up a mission for planning and engagement, flashback, and teamwork. Again, we're going to cruise a lot of this stuff because a lot of it you can just read the book. And a lot of it is just everything we've gone over, just in a different way, which not in a bad way. I like that it's consistent, but it's here and it's just a lot. So, different kinds of scores: assault, deception, stealth, occult, social, and transport. We don't need to explain those. You know exactly what all of those are. So the engagement roll is the next big thing. This is literally like another splat on that initial thing. So the engagement roll really determines like a huge amount of basically how everything goes. So when you're doing a score, you plan. Is there a summary at the end that we can just immediately go to for the score?
Let's see. I started from the bottom going up.
So anyway, so when you do an engagement roll is a fortune roll. So it's a fortune roll then. So start with 1d6 for 1 die for sheer luck. You modify the dice pool for any major advantages and disadvantages that apply. So major advantages and disadvantages is the operation bold or daring? Does the plan's detail expose a vulnerability? Can you or your friends, basically how well you plan can give you plus or minus die, right? And then you roll your engagement roll. And what it says is the engagement roll is not getting to where you're going. It's literally boom, shit's hitting the fan. So if you're breaking into a door, if you're going to say, okay, this is how the plan's going to lay out, right? We get there, we pick the lock while you two run around the outside. When you roll your engagement roll, it assumes that you are literally at that door already and shit's already happening. And the engagement roll really determines basically the first move of what happens and how it goes to shit or not after that. That's basically what the engagement roll is. So it's not about approaching, it's about literally starting the action right when it happens. So you can have 1d6, well, you can have 1 die. You get 1 die for sheer luck. You can add 1 die for every major advantage. You can subtract 1 die for every major disadvantage. And then it's, again, same thing, mixed success, critical, or not. And then there's a series of outcomes. The engagement roll determines the position for the PC's initial actions when we cut to the score in progress. So basically, the engagement actually does help you set up positions and less effect, but more position later. So a little bit less all on the GM determining on this roll. That's helpful. I like that. How long does it last? The engagement roll lasts as long as you feel like it should last. If the situation changes away from that initial scenario, then the engagement roll effects are over and now you move back into the regular like free play stuff, right? There's a big old section here with like a lot of examples. There's a whole section here on linked plans, which is like setting up maneuvers for other players. Okay, flashback. Let's talk about the flashback. I don't like it. You do. So tell me of the flashback and why you like it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like open format, like where there really is no difference between like making a roll right now of what's going on or being like you can just initiate a flashback. So GM sets a stress cost for when you activate a flashback, but you use the same kind of action rolls you would anyway. So 0 stress is an ordinary action for which you had an easy opportunity. The cutter consorted with her friend Chael to agree to arrive at the dice game ahead to suddenly spring out and surprise the ally. I think, and I'll read through this. 1 stress is a complex action or unlikely outcome. And 2 or more is like a very elaborate and involved scheme with opportunities or contingencies. The Whisperer has already studied the history of the property and learned of a ghost that is known to haunt. I don't know, like I think a lot of times when it comes to like heists or stuff, players have a hard time conceptualizing like plans or planning because it's nothing that they do regularly. They do get better as they go, but like that this gives you the option to have like that Ocean's 11 like really ridiculous over the top. It's like, actually before this I flashback had a friend do a thing, you know? Like actually earlier today I paid off a guard to leave this door unlocked at this time, you know? I just like it, you know?
Yeah. No, so I think conceptually, mechanically, I think it's interesting mechanic. This is one of those things where it's like, I think it's interesting. I personally don't like it. It's kind of like the Troika stack, right? Like, I think that's an interesting, fun, cool mechanic. I can absolutely see why people enjoy it. I personally just don't. This, again, still feels very like I'm just watching a game play out in front of me versus being an active participant in the game. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah. I also do like the caveat of like limiting flashbacks as to not like undo things. Like after thing's done, it's done. Like no flashback fixes that. This is like a before you do a thing. kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that this is one of the times where this is a really good explainer, like the limited flashback section, like you're just talking about. Like, you don't undo something, and the example here is the inspector confronts you about recent thefts. When you're at Lady Bowmore's party at the ball, even you can't call for a flashback to assassinate the inspector the night before; they're already there. But she's here now questioning you. You can call for a flashback to show that you intentionally tipped off the inspector, so she would confront you at the party, so you could use that opportunity to impress Lady Bowmore. So, like, you can't undo something that's actively happening, but you can tweak the circumstances in your favor in a reasonable way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that it's not all powerful, but I could see a lot of it, like, instances. And I also think it's the kind of thing that, like, players will use, and then when they get more into playing this, they'll instead be like, oh, in my downtime today, like, before this, I'm gonna pay somebody to go do a thing, or I'm gonna go do a thing to set things up, or what have you. Instead of it being like a flashback, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what it feels like to me? It feels like the same core concept of, like, gear bubbles or supply or whatever from Durf, where it's like,
yes,
you have these three things
Yeah.
that they aren't a thing yet, but they can be if you want them to be. It's the exact same thing, just extrapolated into a different situation.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I might.
I might house rule this and be like, you have 2 flashbacks a day, or 1 flashback, like a mission, you know?
Yeah, I like
you can't
that.
just keep doing more and more. It can't be just like Ocean's 11, where, like, they keep doing more flashbacks.
Right.
The deeper in the series they get.
By Ocean 15, they were literally like,
it's just a whole movie flashbacks.
Everything already happened. Like, we actually already got this diamond a year ago, and the fact, like, you know, whatever. Yeah, but anyway, so giving up on a score, basically you quit and you deal with heat and entanglements. Teamwork, you can do it. You can assist, you can lead a group. There's various ways that you can do that. Protection, a lot of setup. When you perform a setup action, you're helping somebody out. Do you have to use teamwork? No, but I mean, you're a crew. Why wouldn't you? Makes no sense. Yeah. Another great, gorgeous, full piece of art here. A whole example score. A lot of okay, now we're finally getting to a point where we're literally actually going to be like, now we're not going to read that. So the example score is like a lot, like 6-7 pages. Downtime, this is a whole nother section. So downtime is divided into 4 parts: the payoff, the heat, the entanglements, and then your downtime activities. The payoff is after the score, the PCs take stock of their income. A successful score generates rep and coin. You deal with your rep and your coin. We've already talked about rep. We've already talked about coin. Heat is a different interesting part. Basically, this is your what's that game that everybody loves where you beat up prostitutes?
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. This is your Grand Theft Auto heat. Yeah, these are your wanted stars. So Duskwall has prying eyes. You get
That's
heat.
not all you do in that game. So
there's a lot, but you know, you knew what I said when I said it, though, right?
I did, yeah.
So listen, don't assault sex workers, please. After a score or conflict with an opponent, your crew takes heat. 0 heat, everything's smooth and cool. 2 heat, it's contained. It's your standard level of exposure. 4 heat, it's loud and chaotic. High exposure. And 6 heat, it's wild and devastating exposure. So a lot of heat, you're fucked. Add 1 heat for a high profile, well-connected target. Add 1 heat if the situation happened on hostile turf. Add 1 heat if you're at war with another faction. Add 2 heat if killing was involved. And you mark heat on the tracker. And there you go. Another dope. This is a very similar piece of spot art. I wish there was like 3 more of these on those pages earlier where they didn't have one, with this guy who's actively like thieving. Thieving about.
He's thieving.
Yeah, thieving hard. When your heat reaches level 9, you gain a wanted level and clear your heat. So if your heat was 7 and you took 4 heat, you'd reset with 2 heat marked. So your heat doesn't disappear if you go over. You keep the extra and keep going. The higher your wanted level, the more serious response from the law. You could even get to a point where you're incarcerated. So it breaks it down into like how much wanted level before you're caught. So wanted level 1, you get a month or 2 in jail. One level 0, a few weeks, so don't get caught at all. But one level 4, you're going to jail for life or you're getting killed, and that's it. And then there's a breakdown here of the incarceration role that you would actually get to do. So you get 1 die for each PC tier level, and a critical success, you make a name for yourself inside. You gain +3 rep for your crew. You're in prison, but you get prison rep now. That's cool. And then there's literally, bro, there's a whole section too of like, if you do get incarcerated, building the same shit in prison. Like, and I dig that. I think that's, I mean, listen,
Actually,
here's the thing.
yeah, that's a pretty good part, honestly.
Everyone in Ocean's 11 went away for a while, right?
Yeah. He made a lot of friends. So,
yeah. So you
That's
literally
so funny,
then get
dude.
to a point, right? You literally get to a point where you'd roll an incarceration roll to determine how much rep and status you have, right? And then in prison, you can start taking over claims in prison, such as cell block control, guard payoff, smuggling, parole influence, or parole influence. So crazy shit. Entanglements is your scoundrel didn't spring into existence overnight. You have a complex history of favors. So after payoff and heat are determined, the GM generates entanglements. And this is based on one level, on a heat level, and all sorts of stuff like that. It's a roll. There's various levels based on heat and everything like that. So from a heat from 0 to 3, you can either have rivals are unquiet or dead. But if you rub a heat of 6, you can get arrested and stuff. So it's a whole section here on entanglements and all the stuff that comes from being arrested and the various intricacies of the meta level of play between your crew and your stuff. Demon notice, a demon approaches a crew with a dark offer.
Either you deal with this demon or you hide and lose some rep, you know?
Right. There is
a lot of good here. Like, I know we went in hard early, but like a lot of these sections, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of cool stuff to like pull from this. Like, I think that there's a more lightweight version of this somewhere in my head that I'm really interested in playing. You know?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, the entanglement section here is really fantastic. I mean, there's a whole list here of like all the various entanglements that really come down to how well you've, like how much heat you have, your wanted level, the claims that you have, your faction reputation. A lot of that stuff is really, really fantastic. I would say the thing that it's just the first 50 pages are just too wordy. Like I said, like it should be 20 tops. And then all the rest of that should be in a GM section that I could parse if I want to, but didn't need to just to understand the core of the game. That is what, But notice that these sections are not as over-explained as all of that stuff is.
No, they really aren't. Don't worry, we'll get to how to play here in a second. So
yeah, but that's where that should go. It should go into a different section. But we're not getting 10 pages on half of the shit. We're not getting 10 pages on entanglements. We're getting like 3, and it's all useful, right? Downtime activities like acquiring assets and long-term projects and recovery and healing, all of which are rolls and clocks and tables and reducing heat and training. Like that's it. We got like 3 pages for downtime activities. So the action roll took up 11 pages and downtime activity took up like 2 or 3. Vice, stress relief, indulging your vice. We've already talked about that. You can overindulge, which is a great thing to have, which increases entanglements and heat. That's really cool. I love that. So there is a vice roll. A lot of what's crazy is so much of the game is just like one roll, and then a lot of shit happens. You know? Downtime activities, a whole breakdown of downtime. So downtime activity summary, bro. How good is this page, and why is every section not have this?
I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah.
Why isn't the entire book just? I mean, I know there's a lot of sections like these at the end of each part, but like not in the way that this is done. This is genius. Like page 159. This is the whole basics should have been in a chart like this or in a flow chart. But for those in podcast land, it's broken down into like individual like boxes and bisections with roles and the various things that happen and breaking down to each individual part of vice, training, recovery, reducing heat, acquiring assets, overindulgence. It's all broken down. And then there's a whole thing here. So how to play. My gosh, we are just going to scroll through this super fast. So this should really be broken into of just like I don't even know. Like, I think playing the game, not how to play, I think would be a better title, because this isn't telling you how to play the game at all. This is telling you like, does that make sense? Is that nuance just in my head, or does that make sense? So the difference between how to play and playing the game. Like,
no, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, this isn't a functional rules. This is a concepts for playing this game.
Yes, concepts. There you go. Half of the basic section should be in this and the GM section should be split into 2, where you get player concepts and GM concepts. Boom. All right. So fiction first gaming, there's 2 pages on that. You're playing a game and the narrative is what's important. Triggering the action roll. Okay, we talked about that already. We don't really need to go over that. There's two, 3 pages on that. This is a part where I'm like, I don't care how wordy this is. Explain it to me. Like, explain it to me all fucking day. I'll read it all day when I want to.
This is the section where you're like, okay, cool. This section's going to be wordy, you know?
Yeah. But this is, again, this is concepts. This is the higher level concepts of the game. This isn't the quote unquote basics. This is digging into the nuance. This is really understanding and digging deep into like the depths of like why and how it all works together, not the basics. That's why half the basics should be here. How to choose an action, but then it gets weird into this where it's, but like, I don't mind this. I think this is why it's called how to play, like how to choose an action. That's still conceptual. This is all really conceptual. This isn't really a lot of mechanics. I don't see a whole lot of thing about like roll 1 die. This is all conception. The purpose of daggers and stress, NPC threat levels. There's always a consequence, failing gratefully, setting precedents. Again, this is all concepts. Abstraction versus details, actions and play, like actually using the whole page. So then there's a whole breakdown for like every single action, a whole page of like how to use it more. You know, like this is a perfect place for that. But we're not going to go over it.
This section is wordy, but this section's great for what it is.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. Again,
it's perfect the way it is. Like, I don't think the section should be cut down at all. I think this part being verbose is good. It's the first 50 pages where I'm just, damn. All this does not need to be here, or like it needs to be short, you know? Trim it.
It crushed my soul to read, and it took me days to get through 50 pages. Like,
but the rest of the stuff is like, it's funny because the rest of it's really good, you know?
Dude, honestly, I think almost everything after basics is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I've just been scrolling as we've been talking. So then you get to a section on players' best practices. I love that. A lot of this goes into there. Again, great. Like, this is concepts of play. Dig it. Action now versus later. There's a score game in the crew game. There's like a narrative here that's really, really great. There's chapter 7, which is running the game, which is the GM section. So again, half of what's in the basics should be in this section. GM goals.
Yeah, I super think that, I think that there's a lot of good here. I think there's more good than there is bad. I think it's just jarring how rough the first 50 pages are.
I completely agree. And I know we went in hard, and I hope that a lot of the people that listen to this get 2.5 hours in to get to this part, but we'll see. We'll talk about it again when we get to the review. I'm just scrolling again because it's just stuff. So like, this is explaining how to play the game from the, how to run the game from the GM perspective, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic for people that haven't played this style of game before. It's super well written. Honestly, all of this is super well written. Again, our biggest issue is the usability and how verbose the quote-unquote basics are. GM principles, fantastic. GM best practices, I read all of this. They're really fucking great. Like, John Harper knows how to play a fucking game, and he knows how to explain it a lot. GM bad habits, love that. I don't think a lot of ones have that, and I really like that that's in there. It's really, really fantastic. Another narrative bit here. Starting the game, prepping for the first session. I don't know why starting the game is not in the beginning, but I think it's more about, because this is also conceptually more about starting the game. Setting expectations, the questions that can arise from character creation, introducing characters in class. Listen, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry that this is just whipping by, so seizure alert here. Some score breakdowns, the dark future, season 2, a lot of language about TVs and stuff, changing your cast and crew, a dope piece of art here, with a person whose eye is glowing with like a halo and a bird, like really fantastic. Going into strange forces, now we're getting into the lore-y bits, and we're not going to do that a whole lot. So guess what, we talked about it already. It's humans and devils and ghosts and demons,
and I will say that I do like, there are the undead playbooks that talks about earlier. It's got the ghost, the hull, and the vampire. Ghost to ghost. Hull is like a ghost in a like metal body kind of thing, like almost like a golem. And then the vampire is a vampire.
A ghost that, well, it's a ghost that took over a corpse, and I love that.
Yeah, a ghost that took over a corpse for so long that it obliterated the soul of the corpse. And yeah, it's I like this part. I like this is here, and I like that there is a realm in which this becomes your character, you know?
Yeah. And I dig it. I love all of this, but I'll tell you right now, like, there is a way to bring a lot more of this into the base rules for how verbose they are, or to keep it out. But the fact that I don't really start feeling the vibes until like 200 pages in is a lot. At that point, just put it in a different book. Anyway, so yeah, Unquiet Dead, Bells, Crows, and Wardens. I really like this a lot. I like the Death Seeker Crows and the Spirit Wardens. They're really fantastic, vibey as fuck. Spectral Terminology, Ectoplasm, Spiritual Well, Devils, Whispers, Hulls, Vampires. Again, this is all lore. Demons with demon powers and summoned horrors and spirit characters. Love that. Here's the playbooks you're talking about. There's a ghost playbook with the ghost traits. There's a whole playback. A spirit animating a spark craft frame. Love that. I mean, cool. It's got a bit of steampunkiness to it, but it feels more like, I don't know, candle punkiness. I don't, not punk, but you know what I mean. Like it's got a little
dark steampunk.
Yeah, because we're fighting candles because it's candle punk. No, anyway, so
I got goggles on my top hat.
Steampunk ruined the term punk. Anyway, I'm still just scrolling here through all the unseen forces. It's called rituals, learning rituals, performing a ritual, sample rituals, crafting, which is dope. The craft, again, of course, because it's a crafting role, which makes sense throughout the entire thing. Sample creation, sample formulas. Dude, so much of this is so fucking good. Number 9, change the game. This is interesting. I feel like maybe this is another section that could really go up into the GM section, where the GM section should be. Because we're talking about expanding the scope, but this does break it down into a little bit more of like mechanic, not conceptual. Because it talks about like basically like how to make special abilities and how to make different crew upgrades and stuff like that. It's less about, I think, less about changing the game and more like how to make it your own and how to create your own versions of the game. Tweaking what's there. Making things like hardcore resistance, tier tied to lifestyle, vigilante payoff, advanced abilities and stuff like that. That's all really cool. And then I think we're getting into Duskwall, which we're not going to go over. We talked about it at the beginning, and it just is a lot of that. It is. What did we say? It's a Victorian era city, like that's haunted, that runs on demon blood, surrounded by lightning towers.
You guys have played Dishonored. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually played like 2 seconds of Dishonored and it was just not for me.
It's a great game. You're wrong. So
yeah, no, I definitely hit that at a time where I was like, man, I don't like open world games anymore. Just give me Metroidvanias. Anyway, there's a timeline, and then there's basically a gazetteer from like, for what amounts to what, like 70, 80 pages. And it's cool. It's good. It's vibey. It's great. It could be a separate book. There's art throughout, which is really fantastic. I mean, it's really, really fucking good. And as you said, like the maps, so usable, dude. So
yeah, like, they're really very good.
Well labeled,
like
well made.
You're like, oh, you could like, if you want to take alleyways and stuff, you could like conceptualize how to do that. Like it's, yeah.
I don't know that, I mean, maybe size wise, not sure, but you could literally just be like, you see that building right there? You see this, that's our building. You know what I mean? That's how usable this is, from like a top down, like, just like every other map ever, like you're just on the edge of a continent. Like, the cartography in this is fantastic. And again, all still John Harper. So fucking well done. And then that's a lot of that. And then, what else? Let's see in the bookmarks if there's anything else we really need to go over in Duskfall. Law and Order, the Underworld.
There's the other like setting area after Duskfall as well, which I think's I can't remember what it's called.
Is that White Crown?
Maybe.
No,
I'm not even looking honestly. So
there's the Shattered Islands.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And there's indexes, which is just an index. So
yeah. Oh, you know what I didn't check? Is the index? Oh, the index isn't hyperlinked.
Yeah, it's not.
But fuck, would that be a lot? That would be a shitload to hyperlink.
That's a lot. So
okay, and then that is Blades in the Dark. Man, I thought, you know what? This is about how long I think it would take, and my goodness, I think we did it about as fast as we could have, and actually got to actually sit and talk about it versus just
we did it
screaming through. So let's just hop straight into the review. This is Blades in the Dark. So for those out there, we have 5 scores worth 10 points each. We do like to quantify how we view this game. Art and layout is the art, quality, quantity, how well it fits to the game. The layout is the visual layout of the game. Usability is how usable the actual book is, if things are in the right places, if there's hyperlinks, if there's bookmarks, if the physical book has like ribbons and shit like that, are the maps usable, that kind of stuff. Rule set is the rule set and how we like it. If it's adapted, how well is it adapted? If it's original, how do we like it? Originality is a mix of kind of everything, but it's like, is this new? Nothing's new. So how new is it compared to other stuff?
Right.
How different is it? Is it done in a different way? And value is bang for your buck, the amount of stuff you get for the amount of money you pay for the game. So art and layout. So layout wise, I think visually, despite the fact that it is just a lot of walls of text, which I think goes more towards usability.
Yeah,
I think it's extremely well laid out. I think margins and gutters are great. I think the use of bold is fantastic. I think the use of the of italics is really well done. I think the use of fonts is really well done. I think overall, as far as like the visual layout of the actual book, I love there's not 2 columns. I think the visual layout of the book is really well done. I love the tabs on the side of each of the pages. I think that does break up a little bit of the way that the pages look. So that's how I feel about layout. Art, I know you want a little bit more. I wonder if you would feel different if those like 3 or 4 big open spots were filled with some spot art. I feel like that would
help a lot. Like,
yeah.
I mean, for me, yeah, I think there needs, like, I could use quite a bit more art in this book, but specifically, like, really, I think if there's a lot, there were several pages where it's just a block of white, and it's like just something,
Yeah.
A lot
more
more
ninja
pages.
guys.
Yeah.
More things
ninja,
jumping off more shit.
I mean, even just like repeating art that might be later in the book, earlier. Which I'm not saying that's like, but if it's paying an artist, that's the issue. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, John's the artist.
Oh yeah,
the writer is the artist.
Hey, listen, but your own time is worth money and valuable. I get that, but
that's true.
Yeah, I could use way more art than this. I think it looks fine. I think it looks good. It is black on white. But yeah, it's very clean. It's readable. What do you think for this one?
I don't know. See, I personally feel like there's plenty of art because there's a fuckload of full page art. There really is, like, a lot of full page art. The only things that for me are really missing are just those obvious pages of missing spot art. Probably like 4 or 5 pieces maybe. But I think the art that is there is cool. I think it's vibey. I think it's well done. I think the cover is fucking perfect. It's iconic at this point. It is black and white. I mean, I do think it's above a 5. I mean, I do think there is still.
I think it's definitely above a 5.
Yeah, I think so. Again, 5 for everyone out there. 5 is just bang average. It's not bad. It's bang average. We go 1 to 10. 5 is bang average. I think even if you want more art, there is still a lot of art in this book. If we broke down the amount of art pieces in this book, it'd probably be like 30, 40 pieces of art in here. And the layout's readable.
It might just feel like less because there's so much text.
There's so much text, but I do feel like that they do a good job of. It is a lot of walls of text, but you're rarely ever getting a whole page that's just words. There is a good job of bolds and italics and stuff that help break it up just a little bit. So I don't think it's that bad. Yeah. But I don't necessarily think, oh, I wrote a whole section here, but let me just put a piece of spot art in here just because versus some other parts. I don't know. I'm probably between like a 6 and a 7 on this. I think it's definitely not a 5. Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. I think the layout, like nothing. It's good. It's serviceable.
Yeah. It's definitely not bad.
No, not bad by any stretch. Above average. Layout is well done. And the art is super vibey. Missing some spot art, and that's about it. Okay, so usability. Okay, so highlights, bookmarks, hyperlinks. Inline hyperlinks. The usability of the PDF is fantastic.
Yeah.
It took me days to read the very usable PDF.
It really is. It's funny, but like, if you are the type of person who listens or watches the show and you go from the beginning and skip to the end to get rating, because I have heard people do that. During the middle there, we did talk about how much better it is laid out past the first 50 pages. But we're not just going in on that, but yeah, it is first 50 pages of the game is like very wall of text. It's in a really weird order. Stuff is not where I need it to be. It is hard to reference.
It's over explained. You give me a list of what to do. You give me a breakdown of every single one. You give me like 3 more pages for every single one. Then you give me another summary at the end, and it's like, thank you.
I know,
but that's just
it's over explained, and then there's a whole how to play section which over explains all those concepts, but in a place where you kind of want that, you know?
Yeah.
Or it's like, well, you didn't need to over explain at the beginning because here is the space to really expand on those concepts. You know?
I mean, like you said,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the first hour and a half of this whole thing, those first 50 pages, honestly, it taints my whole view of the entire thing. But it is incredibly, as a player just trying to learn the rules to play the game, the first 50 pages are rough.
Yeah.
Like, extremely, the usability plummets. And the fact that there's also not just like you know how most games will have like like the back of Merkborg, you look at the back pages and it's literally just like, here's all the basics of everything on one page. That's not there. And again, there might be a player kit. I know there's a player kit. Didn't even look at it. We're talking about this book. If I need to go to another place to find the things that I need to play the game besides the book that I bought, even if it's free, it's kind of like I don't want to have an app to run 5e. You know what I mean? Like, you know. So. But again, we went in hard on the first 50 pages. After the first 50 pages, I think the verbosity really drops down, and it's very usable with a lot of amazing information. So
I'm actually looking at the player kit right now, and it's funny how
is it exactly what we want?
Kind of. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, more or less.
Yeah. How many pages is it?
3. That's player, scoundrel moves, GM moves, and threats.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't. This one's a really hard one because those first, like I said, it took me days to get through those first 50 pages because I literally was just like, oh my god, like.
I'm gonna give this one, for me, this one is a light 6.
Ooh, I feel like that's.
You think I'm going too high?
I don't see. So here's the problem. It's a 330-page book.
Yeah.
And 280 of it is good, but the part that I need as a player.
Yeah.
Oh, someone in chat said there are 60 art pieces in the book. That's a shitload. That's a one every like six-ish pages, a little bit less, one every 5 pages.
Yeah. It probably is. And fun fact, that's actually not Writhing Games, who did Merger, who just posted that. Shout out.
Oh, hi, Michael Elliott. How's it going? Merger's fantastic. Forged in the Dark is great. I knew that I recognized the name, but thank you for being here. So art and layout, realistically, 6 easy. Usability, I'm between a 5 and a 6, but it is hard because here's the thing.
It is hard.
I feel like you almost have to balance. I feel like the book is in 2 parts right now. The first 50 pages and then everything else. And everything else I think is great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Everything else is so good, but the first 50 pages are brutal.
Just brutal.
So I'm at a light 6. Go ahead.
I think 6 would be being very generous on usability. And I think
thought we're not being generous anymore.
But here's the thing. We then also need to look at maps, which are extraordinarily usable. Great. The hyperlink, like everything else, I think easily bumps this. Cool. Because honestly, if the maps were a little bit worse, or there was a couple less hyperlinks, this would be a 4. If I just looked at the first 50 pages, this would be a 3 or a 4 for me for usability. Right. I think everything else drags it up that high. So I think 6 is about as good as it's going to get for usability. All right, rule set. Aside from a couple of things that I think are specific to me, which I think is very subjective, if I try to look at this objectively, from what I can get from what I've learned after having to parse so much of it, I mean, there's a reason that there are so many Forged in the Dark games. Like, there really are. It's a great system. Like, every time we see a Forged in the Dark thing, I'm like, oh, I really like that. Like, obviously, like, I've been really pro Cyberpunk Augmented recently. And Merger and
And merger, yeah. I'm sorry, we talked about merger. It just feels like it was last episode, or that was
It was like 2 episodes ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, yeah, Forge the Dark stuff, great.
Fantastic.
I like the system a lot. I like the I like the heist thing. I like heist. I think that they're fun. I know that you're not massive on heists, but like I enjoy them. I think it's a fun thing, you know?
But I genuinely think that, like, if you really broke down heist specific stuff in this, it's maybe like a third of it. You know what I mean? Like assassin cults, like all the rest of the stuff, cutters, hounds, all that kind of stuff. You could play this for a million years without ever running a heist in this game. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna hold that against it. I do know people that really enjoy the heist concept. That's totally fine. I just specifically, if we break out everything else, take off all the words of everything and just look at the core mechanics of the game, I really like this system a lot, and I can understand. One of the reasons, though, I understand why it's so hacked so much is because some of it could be hacked off.
Yeah, totally. So much. There's a lot of bloat on this game, which I think knocks it down. You know, like I really could simplify a lot of stuff in here, and I could really drop off a lot of stuff in here. Like, I mean, yeah. What do you think?
I don't think that really drops it down too far for me. I mean, honestly, realistically,
I think this is still an above average game. You know?
Oh, I think it's way above. I mean, at the end of the day, if we just look at the core mechanics, which means drop off all like the meta crew stuff and claim stuff and all the rest of that, I love dice pool mixed success is great. Like, again, it's very cool. Like PBTA adjacent. There's 2 different ways you can do stuff. You can just go PBTA, which is just you get your 2 rolls plus some modifiers and that's it. Or you can go build a dice pool, which kind of maybe allows for a little more circumstantial stuff that you can bring into that, and then you roll your 1 dice and you go. I feel like they're brother sister. I feel like they're almost like they're non-identical twins kind of. It's just how you want to do the similar concept of a game. I love it. I love it across the board. Even the parts that I personally don't love, I think are really fucking interesting. If flashback's not my favorite thing, I think it's really interesting. And I think all the rest of the parts that I had a big issue with was the way that it's explained, as in like the way that you're crafting player behavior, which is a core part of this game. Like the position and the effect. Yeah, I'm at highest I'm gonna go for this as like a 7.
Yeah, I'm at a 7 as well, I think.
Originality. I mean, so it's based on PBTA, but if you had to put like a list of like 5 or 6 of the most hacked games across there and develop the families of each of those, this is one of the. I wouldn't. Totally. I think people would disagree. And you can choose to disagree or not disagree. That's totally fine. You're welcome to have your opinion. I would put PBTA and Forged in the Dark as separate, like tops of their trees versus Forged in the Dark under PBTA, and then everything that comes from it. So I mean, even if you just look at the originality in the way that the rules are done and how people have ran with that because of it being its own kind of thing, I think that's a huge part of it. I do love here's a Victorian city. Oh, but by the way, vampires and demons and void seas
lightning
and
wall,
shit.
killing ghosts and shit. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Do like that.
I mean, heist is a game. I mean, it's cool. I'm sure other ones existed before this, but I don't know. I really dig this. I think reading through a lot of this, I saw what's interesting is I've read a lot of stuff that I now know comes from this versus vice versa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I think lends to its originality as well. So, and yeah, I think regardless, it is a great tool set that you can pick and choose the parts you love out of it. I don't know. I'm pretty high on originality in this because first of all, the setting is great. It's what if you actually really do read through the whole Duskwall setting, it's fucking dope. It's very consistent in its weirdness. I don't know. I'm decently high on originality in this. I think that as one of the games that's most hacked, and for a setting that's dope as fuck, that does speak to me on the edgelordy, like going hard on it. I'm high on originality. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like this game. I really like the mechanics. Like right off the bat, it's a little too bloated for me, but that's okay. I still really like it. Setting wise, I do like the Victorian weirdness. I have seen it before, but not maybe as a tabletop game. Like a lot of the touchstones, like I played a lot, especially video game wise. Yeah, I think this stands alone. It kind of stands out when you talk about Blades in the Dark. People know, and like, like yeah, I played a spider or whatever. I think I'm a good 7 for this one.
I'm good on 7 for this too. You didn't happen to be Googling the cost of the book while we were doing that?
It's crazy that I always do that and I didn't right now. Let me do it right
now. So we'll look up.
Listen, the book in PDF is $30. PDF is 20, and the roll 20, I guess, package
module
is $30.
Yeah. I mean, that's good value. I mean, again, we've talked about this before. People should raise their prices on things. That sucks for our wallet, but they should. Tabletop games deserve more of your money. I think the PDF should be base cost, and book on top of that should be extra cost. So the game should be the game. Right. I think $20 for a PDF is great. I think for a one this size minimum. 15 would be cool, but 20 is minimum.
There's a lot in it. There's a shit ton of stuff in here. There's a lot of hours and hours of game in just this one book.
Mm-hmm. And now, how much extra are you on the Blades in the Dark page?
Yeah, I'm on Evil Hat Productions.
So how much is there more stuff? So there's the player kit. I know. Is there any more downloadable stuff? Is there?
That's on bladesinthedark.com. Let's pull that up.
Yeah. So because I'm positive that there's character sheets because I have them in my Dropbox. So there's a bunch of that stuff.
Let's see, resources. A lot of links to other supplemental stuff. Let's see. Let's open one real quick. Oh wow, cool! It's a lot of it takes you to if you go to bladesdark.com and you look at Blade supplements, a lot of them take you to Dropbox links. So there's like illustrated maps, Grifter crew sheet, like a specific one. Flame Without Shadow plays the blue coats. Broken Spire, a playset about revolutionaries. There's a lot of free stuff.
Get a load of content. How about licensing? I'm pretty sure I saw I know this is all trademarked and copywritten. There's clearly nothing written in here about like it's not CC BY, it's not open source. It's definitely like you got to get a license for it. I remember reading something earlier before on like the Black blog. No, I'm sorry, that was something different. Clearly you can hack it.
Yeah, the contents of the SRD are available for use under the Creative Commons attribution, CC BY. Yeah.
Okay. So the SRD is open source, which is dope.
Yeah.
So the rules are set in Creative Commons. The fictional world is not. Which, you know what? That's fucking fine by me. That's dope. Gosh, I honestly value is pretty fucking good.
The highest score we give it. I'm good with like an 8 verging on a 9 because of all the downloadable stuff I just found. Not quite there, but
I think if everything we're doing is kind of dropping a little bit, I'm not 8, 9. I'm more like 7, 8.
You call it then.
Well, so here's the thing: $30 for this hardback book is a fucking steal. The quality on
it, pretty good.
It's a 300-page book.
Yeah.
And you said there's a shitload of content. It's all CCBY. There's a million hacks of it. I think value-wise, and form fillable character sheets and everything, right? We already talked about that.
Yeah, those are somewhere. So
yeah, those are somewhere. I'm on an 8 for value.
Cool.
Yeah. Easy. Okay. So we're looking at. So this is the second one we've done after episode 100, where we talked about not being harsher with our critiques, but having our numbers trend a little bit lower, because I think we're being like very generous in the context of like we don't really do like bad games, so we should do it in the context of all games, not just good games. This puts at a, and don't forget, that's a 34. And don't forget, a 25 is considered a bang average game. So this is definitely above that. I would honestly say that score all the way across the board would bump up by a good 4 or 5 points with a little bit more spot art on the big blank empty pages and a complete reworking of the basic section and like the how to play and GM section. I don't think a single word needs to be cut from this. I think a lot of words need to be put in different parts.
Yeah.
And that would be really helpful for this.
I think some words need to be cut from basics. So
I mean, but even all of those could be shunted into
a lot of it could be. Yeah.
Into a different section. Honestly, this could be 2-3 books and I'd be totally fine with that. If there was just a player section or even 2 books, a player section, GM section, a book split in half, and then a lore section, I think that would be fantastic. Here's the thing. I know we went on hard on the beginning. I do really like this game. I want to play this game really bad. I want to hack the shit out of this game. I think it's really, really well done. I think that it's extremely clear that John Harper knows how to write a fucking game and definitely knows the ins and outs and nuance of explaining how to play a game. I think just the first 50 pages is too much and extremely hard to parse. I think that's the final critique. Really good game, really verbosely written in a way that makes it hard to parse, but I want to play super bad.
Hell yeah.
All right. That is our episode. So if you have been following us on social media, I actually did drop a calendar coming up this week. I believe on Friday, we'll be doing episode 2 of Side Quests with Mana Ramp Matt, who will be GMing some Mouse Ritter for us.
We're gonna be fucking mice.
Boom. Don't forget, Side Quest is one-shots of games that we reviewed with an emphasis on actually explaining the game so that if you listen to the review and watch Side Quest, you can know how to play the game and take it right to your table. And then starting next week, we're going to be doing on the Adventure Archive side of the channel, we are going to be starting a Dragonbane campaign. Really excited for that. That just dropped from Free League, so check that out. And I think our next game next Sunday will be The Company from Logan Dean. Definitely want to check that out. It was really fun. Thank you so much for all the follows in the chat tonight. Thank you so much for all the people that have been here and have been engaging. Sorry that we are not engaging as much tonight, but that is it. Find all of our socials at our link tree under the weekly scroll. And that is our episode. You guys all have a wonderful night. And Hunter, I will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.